there's consensus from the fire department there.
Alrighty.
You know, Patrick Winston comes out and gives some data by, and you're going, okay, what about?
Could we come up with like a,
Because everything from, Oklahoma City is so different deal. But when the abuse is anyway,
that's what he's going to do.
always had. Other the budget, that's what it is, but they're not adding anything to it.
You ready to go? Okay. I didn't want to stop.
That's the way it's good.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? You guys hear me okay? It's a lively bunch tonight. Good to see everybody. So it is a little after 6, and we're going to get this started. Sadly, we don't have a youngster tonight to get us started, so you're stuck with me. So I will call the meeting to order, and we will call the roll.
Matthews.
Here.
Ingalls. Here. Flood.
Here.
Bolt.
Here.
Rutherford.
Here.
Seahorn.
Here.
Salter.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I understand Travis will do the invocation.
Father, we thank you for today, God. We thank you for the amazing opportunity once again to be about the business of the city of Shawnee. God, we thank you for the amazing individuals who give their just all of their time and energy and efforts to making this one of the best cities that anybody could be a part of. God, I pray for tonight's meeting. I pray for the decisions that we make, and that everything we do, God, whatever it be, that it all bring glory and honor to you. Thank you. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Join us in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okie doke. Okay, that Tony brought.
Yeah. And we also split these up between.
Is all this go with?
So these two go with Mr. Walls.
Okay.
And I believe this is Mr. Morris's email.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm gonna let Casey pass this stuff out, and then we'll get on to the next item. Alrighty, thank you. So item 1 will be citizen participation. Like always, it'll be 3 minutes per person, 12 minutes per topic. There's a few other rules I'm going to go ahead and read this time because we're in that time of year. So number 1, stand and be recognized by the mayor presiding officer. Approach the podium, state your name, sign in the sign-in sheet, which you've already done or you wouldn't be on our list. Distribute any handouts, which I think Casey just took care of, but if you do have some, bring them and we'll get them to everybody so everybody can see them. 4, restrict comments to city business, whether or not on the agenda, speaking for or against candidates for political office, issues on a ballot pending an election, personal issues, city business involving arbitration or litigation are prohibited. 5, state whether speaking as an individual or for a group or organization. 6, address comments to the commission as a body, not to any member thereof. 7, address questions to the mayor presiding officer. 8 is speak respectfully. That pretty simple there. All righty, with that, Looks like after we crossed a couple out, Rob Morris is first. So, Mr. Morris, you come forward and the microphone is all yours. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. My name is Rob Morris. I'm speaking for myself. There's no sign-in sheet, so I guess you're going to take
Y'all
that
got
one
it here.
as
We're good.
as that.
We're good.
What I have for tonight is I asked who owned Leaning Tree and found out in the oddest of ways who owns it. So I would like for that commissioner to at least acknowledge that they can't vote for Blue Zones anymore. ShareCare pays the bills. ShareCare owns Blue Zones. It's a conflict of interest, same as it was before. So let's get that out there. Only this commission has that paperwork thus far. No one else has been given it, but it will come out afterwards. Next, I would like to ask, what is your trajectory for the city of Shawnee after making an investment like that? Where is it you want to point this town towards? Next goes towards our homeless problems. Apparently there's a place called Friends Feast in Meeker that has been told by people in this commission to come feed in the park on Sunday by the library. That in and of it by itself is not a problem. However, this company comes from Meeker. I'm pretty sure Meeker have hungry people on Sunday too, so why are they coming all the way to Shawnee to feed instead of feeding the hungry folks in Meeker? Curious question. Keeps them downtown for sure. Last, and this will also come up during the budget too, the fire department being closed. Still unacceptable, just like it was before. I know there's a presentation tonight, and I can't preemptively know what the city manager is going to say, but from my perspective, we have the money to fund it. We have that rainy day fund that we could take from for the fire department. We also have money from nonprofits that we're not getting the bang for our buck, that as soon as we start paying or stop paying them, we could start paying the guys that'll pull you out of a fire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is it Lorna Bowen? I hope, come on up. And if you would, state your name. I just want to make sure I'm calling you. Did I get your name right? I'm so sorry if I didn't.
Okay. No, it's fine. It's Lorna Bowen.
Okay, thank you,
And
Lorna.
what I'm calling about, what I'm talking about is for the past 11, 12 years, I've been trying, we own the kids zone, that property, and it was condemned by the city, and so we sold part of it to the city. And when we did, they put the fence 12.5 to 13 feet on my property. And I've called and called and called, and they said, well, if it's too far over, we'll move the fence. It's never happened. I've called the surveyor, and they said that they did talk to the city, and they told the city it was 12.5 to 13 feet on my property. And he said the guy that he talked to from the city just kind of shrugged his shoulders and didn't do anything about it. And I understand that you're going to be moving that fence, putting a taller fence up for, you're going to revive or do something different with the kids zone. And so I would like for the city to move their fence back to the west, 12.5 to 13 feet off of my property. And I guess that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank
Okay.
you for making us aware of that.
So will I hear from the city, or what will happen from here?
Well, there'll be discussion on that, I'm sure. So
Okay, yeah.
it's first that I'd heard of that, so you may hear something at the end of the meeting.
Okay,
But we don't normally respond to you here.
okay.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you, I
Appreciate you
appreciate it.
coming and talking to us. Lorna Bowen. Next up, looks like Amy Camerata. I think I saw Amy. There she is. How are you, Amy?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well.
For the participation comments, I really just have one quick thing. I'll save the rest for the budget public hearing. But as you know, I'm a resident of the Shawnee Twin Lakes, live in Ward 2. And, you know, for the last year plus, I've been an advocate for more police out there, more security on the Lake Advisory Board. It was the #1 recommendation. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Chief of Police, the City Manager, for that happening. Memorial Day weekend, we had great presence. We've, of course, seen a lot more patrol around the lake, but they were on the lake Memorial Day weekend. There's been a lot of comments about, you know, them pulling over and giving education. I don't know if they're giving tickets or not, but giving education, which is good. That presence is really helping. So just wanted to give thank you where thank you is due.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Ken Landry. Mr. Landry. How are you, sir?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing great.
Ken Landry. I'm here on behalf of the Potawatomi County Historical Society. First, I'd like to publicly acknowledge that we received a letter of intent to rescind the letter to terminate us at the depot today. So that's a great positive step, and I want to acknowledge that publicly. I also want to address the proposal by Commissioner Ingalls and Matthews that is here available tonight. And I want to say that I wholeheartedly endorse this framework. It'll be a pleasure to work together with the city in the future, I hope, to make the Depot District a thriving destination. You know, a lot of people don't realize we already have down there 2 city parks. And we're going to have 3 museums and then additional shops and everything down there. So it really is great, and I'm excited about being able to work hopefully in the future with the city. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
We won't do that here, though, but,
Okay.
but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up is Tony Wall. I think you're right up front. How are you, Tony?
Sorry about that. I think I've been around chainsaws for too long, so kind of hard to hear. But my name is Tony Wall, Mayor Bolt, members of the commission. Thank you for hearing my presentation tonight. I'm going to try to get through this in 3 minutes. I'm not certain that I can, but I will attempt to do so. I'm writing to appeal a process to demolish a building that's located at 519 East Highland. This building has been around for a while. The last couple of owners have not done anything to renovate it, restore it. They had no interest in doing so. I did have an interest in it because I have a business which is right next door, which is the Shawnee Sawmill. My purpose for this is to have a place that I could store lumber to dry, because it's easy to cut lumber. It's more difficult to use it if it's not dried. And so I essentially needed a roof over this. But I looked at this also from the standpoint of turning this into a valuable investment. The building is actually 8,000 square feet. It's wide open. I've examined it from top to bottom. I'm aware of what needs to be done with it. The building is essentially sound, other than the west side of the building, which has some stuff that's falling down, primarily because it was an add-on and they never sealed the brick and water got in it, froze, split, and so forth. That's a problem that I can rectify in one day with some equipment that I currently possess. My other plan with this was to address the issue I think that probably the commission is concerned about, and that's that it is not only an eyesore, but it's also like all other vacant buildings around, it's also a potential homeless gathering place. And so my plan was, number one, to immediately seal the building, and to do so with something that's going to be attractive, and then to paint it. So then to deal with the structural things that are involved. I've already made arrangements for financing to do this, so this is not a situation like I know you all have dealt with in the past, where somebody says, don't tear down my shack, and they say, I'll fix it up, and then they never do anything. In this case, I knew that was a potential problem, so I made arrangements in advance to finance the renovation of this building. I see no reason why it should be demolished, other than in the past, no one has been willing to do what I'm willing to do. And so that's what I'm asking you all to do, is to stop the process, which is moving forward to demolish the building. I'm sure that each of you is familiar with current building costs. at 8,000 square feet, even at $50 a square foot, it's worth over $400,000. In reality, you can't build a building for $50 a square foot anymore. So it is a valuable resource, and to tear it down is just going to leave an empty lot, another place for trash to gather, another place for homeless people to set up their tents, and so forth. I had more to say to you tonight. You want to say anything?
Shelley Wall,
My wife
you
is-
were up next. Okay. I had a hunch that might be what was going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I may be a fast talker, but I'm not that fast.
Okay.
Benefits to the city of Shawnee. There are a number of benefits. Number one is that I sat here at the last meeting and listened to the budget presentation. Shawnee is not in a situation where it has additional money to spend on things that aren't necessary. I talked to Andrea. Andrea, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, so forgive me. But I believe you had a bid at $28,000. I had a bid from a guy that sat out there that I met in front for over $50,000. Honestly, I think it's going to cost more than that because I've done a few of these things. So why spend the money if you don't need to is number one. I already mentioned the creation of another vacant lot. It'll have liens on it. It's unlikely that anybody's going to come in there and put another business in other than me because it fits my situation. It's right next door. I can go straight from my lot into the building without even getting on the street. So eliminating another empty structure, another empty lot. It is a local business opportunity, which is dragging me now. I started this business with the idea of not going into debt. I wanted to see if there was a market, and currently I'm being pulled. There's more work, there's more product there than I can produce. And so it's not a matter now of is it a viable business. It absolutely is a viable business, and it's needed greatly in this town. Improving the appearance of the property, improves the property values, generates property taxes, it generates payroll taxes, it puts people to work, it employs families in a time after COVID when it seems like that's the opposite direction that everything is going. So providing an affordable location for other businesses as well. With 8,000 square feet, I could easily rent part of that out. My needs would be met, and another business's needs could be met, because there is very little affordable warehouse type space in the city of Shawnee. So that basically summarizes what I wanted to say to you. I've had an opportunity to talk with each of you. Cammie, I know you were in the middle of a lot of business when we talked briefly, and I didn't want to sidetrack you there, but hopefully you will consider this from the standpoint of I'm a citizen here. When I read the information, it said that you all were here to serve on behalf of the people. I'm one of the people, and I'm asking for your help on this.
Thank you very much.
I'm available for any questions that you may have, or...
We don't do that here at this
Okay.
part of that, but
All right.
thank you so much.
Thank you for hearing me out.
All righty, next up, looks like Joey Ward. Mr. Ward, no, I saw him earlier. There he is. How are you, sir?
Doing good. How are you all doing?
Doing great.
Still having this issue with building enforcement about a shipping container being used for storage. They had told me that 20-footers and 40-footers, it didn't matter. They weren't allowed. So I went by and I had them give me the code, ordinance, things like that pertain to that. And any buildings under 200 square feet don't fall under this at all. So a 20-foot container, it doesn't apply. But the 40-foot container is designed and engineered exactly the same. And he says snow load. Well, 10 pounds per square foot is required. A shipping container has 330 pounds per square foot. I mean, it's a solid steel container. I can see having a permit, maybe something where every year they come and look at it, make sure the roof's not rusting through and stuff like that. But then again, I got to say, if it's somebody's storage space and they're choosing to store their stuff in it, and even if it's got a bad roof and they choose to let their stuff get spoiled, why is that our business? But surely there's an opportunity here for some recurring income. But where I was told you couldn't even put a pot in a driveway to move, it don't apply. It don't apply. Right here it says, work exempt from permit. One-story detached accessory structures, provided the floor area does not exceed 200 square feet. Well, they're only 160 square feet, so we have no say on a 20-foot container. But I think that we should tell Kevin, or ask him, Kevin, can you kind of put the brakes on this, and let's see if we can come up with some recurring income possibility for the city for permits for these containers to be used in construction and other things, instead of just saying, hey, you just can't have them. And I tell you, I've talked to multiple people about their containers. So far, I'm the only one being called on it. I don't get that. Nobody else has even been notified that there's a problem. So I don't know if I just get to be special, but it is what it is. I'm getting rid of mine. I'm going to have to put the stuff that I took out of my shed and put it back in that dumpy old shed and have the container hauled off and leave the dumpy old shed there. Because he can give me up to 180 days, but no, he's going to give me 30. I mean, I'm just trying to make the neighborhood look better. Surely we can make this work somehow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, looks like Betty Scott. There she is. Whoop. How are you doing tonight? Doing okay? That's all right. Just we won't bite, I promise.
I realize that I've been neglecting my home, which has been my home since 1980. I raised my children there. I got a 36-year divorce after that, and then I just kind of lost it.
I'm going to interrupt you, but not to be rude. Are we talking about the property that we're having a public hearing on?
Cleveland Street?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay, so just to save you, I mean, you can continue to talk to us, but we will have a public hearing regarding that property, and you're going to be asked to speak at that. My guess is you're probably saying
I don't know the procedures.
That's okay. That's not a problem at all. But, I mean, you don't have to speak right now is what I'm telling you.
Okay.
You will be given an opportunity at the public hearing, and you won't be limited to 3 minutes, so.
Okay. I just trying to save my home.
No, absolutely. If you want to keep speaking, you're welcome
Okay.
to
So
do
do I
that.
need to do anything else
No,
then?
ma'am.
You just recognize I was here.
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't know.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay,
But
thank you.
We will have a public hearing, and you'll be able to come up and speak to all of us at that time. Thank you so
Well,
much.
I'm very good at that.
Okay, all righty, very good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All righty, I believe that was our last speaker. So we will move on to item 2, which is consideration of the approval of the consent agenda. Has anybody got anything they'd like to pull out of the consent agenda?
Need to pull,
Bits.
What's that? It kind of flickers on and off is
Yeah.
what's,
need to pull,
did you have something you're going to pull?
item A, please.
Yes.
Yes,
Which one?
A.
A?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So 2A,
Mm-hmm.
the minutes? Or here, is this the one you're? Let's see. So 2A. Okay, so Travis would like to pull 2A. Anybody got anything else that they like to pull? Anyone got a motion?
Move to approve item 2 with item A pulled.
All righty, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 2 with the exception of item 2A. We'll call the question. And that motion passes 7-0. Now we need to deal with 2A. Anyone have a motion on that?
Move to approve item 2A.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Darren. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for approval of item 2A. We'll call that question. And that passes 6 in favor and 1 abstention. Item 3. Is presentation by Animal Control to present Pet of the Week. And it looks like we got something really little. Oh my goodness.
Hi, I'm Brandy, and this is Wendy. We're from Animal Welfare. And with us today, we have Stripes. He is our pet of the week. He's about 8 weeks old, and he is up for adoption. He will be with the adoption fees and spay and neuter deposit, and also a city tag altogether be $40. Currently at the shelter, we have 46 dogs, 9 cats, and a rooster.
And a rooster.
And a rooster. And we have done 9 adoptions of dogs. 3 cats have been adopted, and 4 dogs have been reclaimed.
Wow.
So if you guys, we have plenty of puppies and kittens to choose from if anybody's interested. Also, we have a lot of great adult dogs if anybody wants to come and take a look. Most everything's already spayed and neutered, and has the rabies vaccination. So most of them are only going to be the $5 adoption fee.
So that's a bunch more dogs than you've had
We
lately.
have 3 litters right now of puppies. 2 of the litters are about a week old, and 1 is about 4 weeks old.
Wow.
So that contributes to most of the higher numbers than normal,
Yeah.
is because of all of the puppies.
Okay, very
Okay.
good.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Item 4 is a public hearing for the City of Shawnee proposed budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. And our Assistant Finance Director, Mr. Bussell, is up. How are
Hello.
you?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. All right, let me see if I can, do I point at these? There we go. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This presentation is an overview of our proposed fiscal year 23 budget for the purpose providing some context for the public hearing. The proposed fiscal year 23 budget was initially presented by our city manager on May 16th. Since that time, our online budget book and the budget summary has been available on our website, and the budget summary has been published in the Shawnee News Star in the May 24th edition. As a refresher, and for those that may have missed the city manager's presentation, I'll spend just a few minutes reviewing some of our budget process and environment. The City of Shawnee encompasses a general government component as well as 2 public trusts, those being Shawnee Municipal Authority and the Shawnee Airport Authority. The city and its trusts operate under an annual budget in accordance with Shawnee's municipal code, which specifically states that the city manager shall prepare annually a complete financial plan for the ensuing year and shall be responsible for the administration of such plan when adopted by the City Commission. In turn, our municipal code is compliant with state statutes. Defined in the state statutes, appropriations mean an authorization to expend or encumber revenues and fund balance in a fund. At the end of a fiscal year, the appropriations within a fund, within a budget lapse, and with the governing body's approval of the next fiscal year budget, new appropriations are put in place. The budget is adopted at the fund level by revenue type and expense per department. Click the wrong button. There we go. Thank you. There we go. There are 2 budget development aspects I'd like to highlight. First, the city's budget was developed in close coordination and collaboration with each city department, and it was guided by the budget and financial planning policies that were adopted by the City Commission on March 7th, 2022. These policies specifically set the following framework. The city will not borrow from any external source to fund ongoing operations. Any excess fund balances should also be used to support ongoing operations, but it may be budgeted to fund one-time expenditures. Each city fund that supports personnel should include a contingency reserve of no less than 2% of the fund's budgeted operating expenditures. And the general fund must maintain operating reserves in the amount of no less than 14%, which equates to approximately 2 months of continued operations. Other funds that also support personnel or operating expenditures must maintain operating reserves at a target level of 5% to 20% of the total budgeted expenditures. The identification of funding needs was accomplished through a joint review in which the department heads, the city manager's office, and the finance department participated. In the second phase of the budget development, the city manager's office and the finance department estimated reasonably available revenues. The projections are conservative and aligned with the average historical receipts. The third phase of the budget development saw operating and core capital needs balanced against estimated revenues. Lastly, throughout the budget development process, we received position requests from multiple departments, but only one position request was included in the budget. However, this new position was only granted in exchange for the elimination of another position within that same department. Our overall budget is position neutral, holding steady at 281 FTE positions. These encumber 73% of the general fund, 18% of the municipal authority fund, 26% of the airport authority fund, respectively. At 281 FTEs, the City of Shawnee is operating with minimal staffing levels. Unfortunately, until new and recurring funds can be identified, the submitted position requests are on hold for now. Types of revenues. The city has access to different types of revenues. Recurring revenues can reasonably be assumed to be available every year and is therefore the basis for ongoing operations and personnel costs. These recurring revenues include sales and use tax, water, sewer, and garbage collection service fees, fees for licenses and permits, and rental and interest income. In the proposed budget across all funds and departments, the recurring revenues account for approximately 40% in the new budget. The city also has access to periodic revenues tied to specific time periods such as our half-cent sales tax, which is in place until 2028, and our downtown TIF district, which also has a sunset date. Other revenue sources for this type may be related to specific eligibility requirements, such as our community development block grant, which is population and income based. The periodic revenue makes up 4% of next year's budget. Also, one-time revenues. One-time revenues are those that are associated with fund balances, special disbursements, project-specific loans, grant applications or donations, and etc. These one-time revenues account for over 55% of the proposed fiscal year 23 budget. Once spent, the revenues will not renew, which means that once something like ARPA or our OWRB loans are spent, our annual budget thereafter will shrink significantly. That wraps up a few key highlights from our budgeting process and environment. We'll now move on to an overview of our primary funds in the proposed fiscal year 23 budget. The general fund. In general fund revenues, we estimate an amount of $25.5 million. Sales and use tax is our largest revenue source here, making up approximately 66% of general fund revenues. The basis of our sales tax projections is an average of the most recent 3 years of sales tax revenue. For general fund expenditures, we estimate an approximate $26.4 million. Personnel services is our largest percentage at approximately 72% of the total general fund expenditures. Now, you may have noticed on that previous slide that expenditures exceed revenues. This is explained on this current slide with our operating reserve. The general fund operating reserve, or fund balance. Our public policy gives a range for fund balance of 14% to 20%. For the fiscal year 23, we plan on utilizing 988,000 approximately of our operating reserves for one-time expenses. Those one-time expenses would be such things as the Unified Development Code, police and fire contract bonuses, and other one-time capital expenditures in compliance with our budget policy. We estimate that operating reserve will be about 14% at the end of fiscal year 23, staying within our budget policy range. This chart shows us a breakdown of expenditures by department for the general fund. Our general fund holds many of our core services: police, fire, parks, and streets. As public safety is a core service, the combined expense from police and fire is approximately 60% of total general fund expenditures. A notable difference here from prior year, this breakdown is the admin department. The admin department includes the city manager's department, the city attorney's expenses, and 2% contingency reserve, which is $500,000 approximately. The general fund expenditures broken out by expense type. This highlights personnel expense as our largest percentage of total general fund expenses, with the category of other services and charges being the second largest at approximately 21%. General fund FTE breakdown. This chart breaks down our full-time equivalent positions, FTE, being funded by the general fund. Out of a total of 281 FTEs for the city, the general fund supports 223 FTEs of these, with the remainder held in other funds. A difference in presentation here from prior year is the engineering department. The engineering department has absorbed building inspections, code enforcement, and permits, which previously resided within the planning department. Some general fund highlights are the funding of core services, demolition of dilapidated structures, community service contracts such as COTS and community renewal for family events, and the Unified Development Code, and of course our 2% contingency reserve, which is new from prior year. Okay, moving on to the Shawnee Municipal Authority, SMA Fund. The Shawnee Municipal Authority Fund, or SMA Fund, the revenues for this fund, we've estimated approximately $36.8 million. Sorry, I said that wrong, $36.8 million. Excluding loan proceeds of approximately $20 million for the water and wastewater plant construction, our largest revenue sources here are charges for water, sewer, and sanitation services. Combined, these account for approximately $15.4 million in revenue for fiscal year 23. For SMA fund expenditures, we've estimated an approximate $36.8 million. The SMA fund operating reserve, or fund balance. Our budget policy here gives a range for the fund balance of 5% to 20%. We've estimated that operating reserve will be 7.8% at the end of fiscal year 23, staying within our budget policy range. On this SMA breakdown by division, you'll notice that the utility administration has approximately $24 million in expense. Although this department does support 4 FTE, $20 million here is for the water and wastewater treatment plant construction. $2.6 million is for our solid waste collection services contract with Central Disposal. And lastly, our 2% contingency reserve at approximately $340,000. SMA fund expenditures broken out by expense type. Again, excluding the $20 million in loan proceeds for the construction costs for the water and wastewater plant, personnel costs would be approximately 18% of the total expenditures in fiscal year 23. For the FTE breakdown in SMA, This fund supports 49 FTE in total. Some general fund, or some SMA fund highlights here would be funding core services in SMA, the water and wastewater treatment plant construction, Twin Lakes dam repair, CityWorks software, annual lagoon cleaning and digester cleaning, the USIC locate services contract, and our 2% contingency reserve. On to the Shawnee Airport Authority. For the SAA fund, the revenues, we've estimated $957,000 approximately. A significant majority of these operating and maintenance expenses are funded by airport-generated revenues. Capital investments are supported by federal grant revenue, state grant revenue, and transfers in from the general fund. And for SAA expenditures, we've estimated an approximate $1 million. For the SAA fund, their operating reserve, our budget policy gives a range, again, of 5% to 20%. We estimate that the operating reserve will be 22.94% at the end of fiscal year 23. This does exceed the 20% policy ceiling, but this additional 2.94% will be used to support future capital projects. The SAA fund expense by account type and the FTEs presented here. The SAA fund supports 3.5 FTE, the largest two expenditure types being materials and supplies at 34.4% and personnel at 25.7%. The SAA fund budget highlights here. Funding for the airport services would be one of the highlights. Tractor shed, an upgrade to the lamp lights to LED, repair to T-hanger foundations, repair to airport lift stations, and our 2% contingency reserve since it does support personnel. On to our capital funds. Capital Improvement Fund. We have revenue and expenditures estimated at approximately $2.6 million each for the Capital Improvement Fund. On this breakout of expenditures by department, shows the primary usage of our Capital Improvement Fund for fiscal year 23 will be for debt service and transfers for debt service, public safety, and IT upgrades. Some Capital Improvement Fund budget highlights would be public safety gear replacement and vehicle replacement, a boat dock for the Twin Lakes Patrol, and a new animal shelter, among others. For our street fund, we have revenue estimated at approximately $3.7 million and expenses estimated at approximately $3.3 million. The street fund expenditure breakdown by department presented here. Most are the transfer out for debt service. See Public Works at $2.5 million and engineering at $150,000. Some of the budget highlights would be Kickapoo Avenue widening. The Kickapoo Avenue widening is a joint project with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, as you know. Also, a highlight is the Main Street Bridge. Just recently, we've received confirmation that we are part of the ODOC Public-Private Partnership P3 program, which will return up to $750,000 in tax rebates to the city for this project. Our 2018 Capital Improvements Fund. Here we have total revenues of $22.3 million and total expenditures of $21 million, and most of the projects we've discussed at length in the city manager, their updates. 2018 Capital Improvement Fund. Here we have a breakout of by department. For culture and recreation, we have parks, projects that are for parks, auditorium, senior center remodels. Community center, the library. In engineering, we have the 45th Street and some sidewalks. Public works, we have panel replacements and overlays for the fire department, station remodel and a fire truck, and of course debt service. Those are associated with our 2018 and 2020 notes that were taken out to fund the projects prior to full collection of the sales tax. Some highlights we have here. The first one being Kid Space Park and Woodland Veterans Park. Roadway panel replacements and overlays, continued installments of sidewalks and trails, and the 45th Street phase one design. And lastly, we have the American Rescue Plan Act Fund. Total revenues on this sheet is $4.1 million, and total expenditures being $3.1 million. Now, on this particular fund, just today, we received our second tranche of grant funding. So this would actually be updated. Total revenue, we've already received it all as of today. So this would need to be updated. The ARPA fund expenditure breakdown. We're using this to make a difference in our water and wastewater system. So some of the highlights, in addition to the ARPA money distributed directly to the city of Shawnee, the state of Oklahoma received approximately $1.87 billion. The city has applied to the state for $9.9 million in funding to support critical water and wastewater line replacements. As part of that application, the city showed matching support of $1.1 million of the city's share of the ARPA funds. Again, I pushed the wrong button. We're almost done. There we go. The last slide, public hearing. And that is it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All righty, so we will open the public hearing. See if, is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of the proposed budget? And I promise we won't make you use the clicker. You want to come, Amy? You got to come up here, though. But you're. Well, that's That's fine.
I can break it up if you'd like me to do it in two different. Okay. Thank you. I think you answered a couple of questions that I had. I had noticed that there was an additional $110,000 capital expense on the lake operations, and I was just wanting some clarity what that was for. If that was for the dam repair, if it was for the survey that we have bids out for, or maybe it's both, or if there was something else different for that. And I think that may have been answered, that it's a dam repair, but if it's something else, if you could clarify that. And then I had also noticed that animal control had an additional $307,000 as a capital outlay, and I was hoping that that was for a new shelter, and so I'm happy to see that that is there. It is very much in need to have better facilities, more updated, I don't know, updated, but at least safe facilities. Do you want me to address the areas where I have some concern, or you want me to come back afterwards?
Probably have you come back, because
Okay.
I'm gonna, but hang tight. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in favor? Okay, seeing none, I'll close that portion. So guess who gets to speak first in opposition?
Okay, well, this is the tough part always. So I noticed that the police patrol division for personnel cost had a decrease of $450,000, or I'm sorry, $300,000 for personnel costs. And I just hope for some clarity there. As we know, likewise on the fire side, and I know you're going to talk about that more in a little bit, Andrea, but we all know that right now we have a fire station that was built and approved by voters on tax money, so that we could build that. Now that station is not being operated. So on fire, we have the same amount budgeted for 2022 and 23 as we did in 2021 and 22, But we obviously didn't have enough money there because now we have a brand-new station that's not staffed. So how are we going to address that in the 2023 budget? Because we obviously need more money there. And are we looking at having the same problem in the police department if we are shorting their personnel costs by $300,000 for the next year?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm against the budget so far. One thing for the fire department and money for them, from talking to PD, just curious with them, I kind of figured out how to give them a raise and even hire 4 more police officers, which could be broken up to, have money for the fire department. Such examples would be Shawnee Forward, take economic development back. They don't need those non-disclosure agreements anymore. Various studies that we do over times. The rainy day fund, to help us get it back up and running and then figure out what we can do to sustain the firefighters in that building. We shouldn't have to have them sleep in there for a couple hours just so somebody's in the building so that during the daytime it's empty. I mean, we see that post every day. Next, let's see, switch to. So go over here. I do have some questions. In a year's time, we had 6 guys fired, which would be a total of about $400,000. So where'd that money go for the fire department? Second question is, where's the half-cent sales tax that's apparently supposed to go for the fire department? Last, I have to jump again. Last year, June 6th, we did, after the contract review committee did their thing for the budget, we did the contracts for Shawnee Forward and Coca and so on. Yet tonight, that's not on the agenda. We did it before the public hearing for the budget because it should be a part of the budget. But y'all haven't even voted to renew their contracts for the next year, yet we're talking about a budget that's apparently pretty much already done. That needs to be addressed too. With that, keep the fire department open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing then. Any discussion up here? Let's see.
I have one. We're looking at the contingency fund at 2%, and I sure think that's wise. That's the OML recommendation. Historically, we haven't had any, or we haven't met the expectations of OML. You can correct me exactly what we've had. Is there a possibility to walk to 2%? Like if we did 1% this year, 1.5% next year, 2%?
We actually have a higher fund balance in this, we do have a higher fund balance in this year than we propose for next year. You may remember Jacob's slide that showed a higher fund balance when we're using almost $1 to pay out police and fire bonuses and a couple of other one-time expenditures. So we've already walked it back, but we've not dropped below the 14% we said we would hold, because sales tax is so volatile and it makes up so much of our general fund.
I may have not asked the question correctly. Okay. I mean the 2% like
on the
reserves.
Contingency.
The 2% contingency reserve. That also goes in with the now I understand your question. That also goes in with the volatility of the sales tax, because we've seen such significant difference from one month to the next in terms of what we take in sales tax receipts, that in light of the most recent consumer price index increase of 8%, 2% is probably not even going to come close if something goes sideways.
I don't disagree. I mean, if we're at 8% inflation and we're looking, I mean, proposing a budget for anything right now is very, very challenging. I just know that's been the one thing that the public tends to pick on when we're putting 2% back, which I think is a smart move, right? the OML recommends it for a reason. Just wondering what our historical contingency has been and if we have any wiggle room there.
We did not have a historical contingency. This is truly the first year. I can tell you that as we're closing out this current year budget, we are finding multiple funds that currently do not have enough and don't cover the incoming expenses, and we're at the beginning of June and we still have the rest of the month to go. So if we would have had a 2% contingency fund, now is the time that this would come into play.
Right. And I'm not against it. I just think it's good that we talk about why we're doing it, because I think we all know the state of the city's finances a few years ago when we had to do layoffs and RIFs, and nobody wants to do that again. But I think it's fair to ask, if we've traditionally done 0 and we're jumping to the full recommended 2, and if there weren't 8% inflation and we weren't worried about that, perhaps we could walk it to kind of reasoning it out as we go, but just welcome your thoughts on that. Not even tonight, just as we've had further discussions.
Any other questions? I don't see taking action on this tonight.
No,
Yeah.
this is just for the public hearing
Right.
for our budget.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that was clear. I mean, we're not voting on the budget tonight. I mean, we had the budget hearing, but we're not voting on the budget. Anybody got anything else? Benny, you good?
Yeah, I've said it before. This is the first year that we have had a budget report way before tonight. Usually we get it tonight, the first time to see it, and have to make a decision then in 2 weeks. We've had about 4 weeks to look at it and make decisions. And working with management and getting information back.
It's definitely been really good. No doubt. Anybody got anything else before we move on?
I mean, I think it's smart to be conservative. I mean, with the economic indicators out there, you know, we're the unknown. So, yeah, I'm all for the rainy day, even though it tightens the budget for everything else.
Yep, we can always loosen up if things go well, but
Better
probably
safe
good
than
to start
sorry.
out tight, definitely. I'm gonna make sure everybody's got a chance to ask questions, or everybody's good.
Andrea, just for the benefit of the public, can you outline a couple items that would be covered under the emergency fund? That 2%, would that be, say, when the pipes burst? That would be an example of something we'd use it for.
There are several examples of that currently going on. The fuel purchases, for example, are coming in so much higher than we anticipated a year ago. So we do not know what that will look like next year. Right now, we could really use a 2% contingency fund. We also have aging equipment that in some cases requires more maintenance than originally anticipated. Again, a 2% contingency fund would have been wonderful to have in this budget. These are really, they're truly across all departments. This does not just affect one department specifically, but this is where we're looking at any available funding that we have not expended to cover those shortcomings.
Fuel in
In addition
itself,
to-
fuel in itself will eat up that 2%
Fuel
pretty quick.
itself, and really that extends to all materials and supplies that we have to purchase. Everything has become considerably more expensive than we originally anticipated, well beyond the 2% increase.
Anybody got anything else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 5. Consideration of the declaration of the mayor of the city of Shawnee declaring an emergency within the city limits and such additional territory as may be described herein, authorizing the action of the city manager pursuant to state laws and the municipal code for the city of Shawnee. And I think Michelle's up. Boy, you were fast. I didn't even see you get up there. How are you?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. On the May 4th, 22, Shawnee received over 7.5 inches of rain from a severe weather event that also produced tornadoes from Earlsboro into Seminole County. This event caused 3 areas of Shawnee to deteriorate and wash out, closing roads and trails. So this emergency declaration is the first step in order to apply for state or federal reimbursement on repair of those roads. So staff recommends approval of the item.
Okay, very good. That's just pretty standard deal, so we can get money down the road. Anybody got any questions for Rochelle while we've got her?
One of the questions, what, if there are other areas of Shawnee and other parts of our community that are continuing to be affected by high water situations and damage, how would those parts of Shawnee and roads and neighborhoods, how would those be brought to this attention to be put on the list with these properties and these areas that we have right here? Yes.
I know some areas you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'd have to get with the city engineer, but these type of declarations has to happen at that one event, and it has to show that it wasn't due to neglect. So road washed out from that amount of water. We've identified 3 areas. So city engineer and everyone will have to start working on making those roads better.
Okay. So if that's something that, how would those be brought to to the city engineers? What would be the best protocol to bring that to your attention so that citizens can ask about those areas and those properties and those roads?
They can inquire through the engineering department and complain about any roads or deterioration.
Okay.
Anybody got anything else? All righty. Anyone got a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Darren and Travis. All righty, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 5. We will call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 6, consideration of a boundary adjustment for the City of Shawnee outdoor warning sirens. And Rochelle is up again.
Yes, so with the May 4th storm, our sirens here in Shawnee activated for the Earlsboro tornado. The City of Shawnee's early warning zones exceed our city limits due to the previous emergency management covering the entire county. Now that Potawatomi County has its own emergency management and they're installing their own outdoor warning systems all over the county, this excessive zone coverage is no longer needed. We're wanting to shrink the zones down to the city limits to ease any confusion about our warning zones. This action will not affect the operation or coverage of the sirens themselves. And there is one area, the southwest corner of Zone 1, the Shawnee Twin Lakes, that staff agrees to keep an additional warning area since that's the main direction severe weather comes into our area. And this will cost nothing to shrink the zones, and staff recommends approval of the item.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Good. All righty.
I'm good. I move to approve.
I'll second it.
All righty. Thank you very much. Had Darren and Cammie, it sounded like. All righty. So we have a motion and a second for approval of item 6. We will call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 7, consideration of resource center memorandum of understanding with Shawnee Rescue Mission. And Ryan Harkins is up. How are you tonight, Ryan?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you. Ryan Harkins, Community Development. This is a item for consideration for adopting a memorandum of understanding with the Shawnee Rescue Mission. As noted when Erica, our homeless assistance program coordinator, spoke to you a couple weeks ago, one of the steps being worked on is a day resource center where members of the homeless community can be, one, out of severe weather, out of hot weather, have an opportunity to get resources that they need and work with individuals to help them get that assistance. Also gives staff and volunteers an opportunity to work with them and get a better idea of where their needs are and do intake and processing in order to get them into our database, so we can get them aligned up with the appropriate resource providers. So the rescue mission has stepped forward as the place that is willing to help be the location of that resource center during the day. And this would be staffed as we're able, starting with a handful of volunteers and interns. And then as we build additional volunteers, we would be able to provide additional hours of operation. And this would be a year-long MOU. Some of the interns and volunteers that would be staffing that resource center are sitting over my shoulder, and they have become great individuals to work with, and I appreciate all of the work that they do. But with that said, staff wholeheartedly recommends approval of this item to the commission.
Very good. Yeah, I think this is a great step forward personally. I mean, I think it can get the activity out of the library where it was not intended to be, get activity out of the park where it was not intended to be, and hopefully we connect these folks with services and get them housed and keep moving
Agreed.
forward.
And the volunteers and the resource providers have already started doing that type of coordinating work. And so we're hoping that this does continue to pull those individuals to this location and help ease the issues related to the homeless community in other parts of downtown.
Absolutely. Anyone got any questions?
I have three.
Okay.
The MOU start date is 4/1. Does that need to be corrected?
That was when we first started drafting it, so we could amend it. We were making amended approval to begin today.
Okay, that's maybe just housekeeping, but I don't want us to get, and maybe this is too in the weeds, but will we move from MOU to a contract?
We would start with an MOU just as a matter of working relationship. We're not paying rent specifically. If this begins to stay as a long-term type of opportunity, that a contract is something we can certainly look at going to.
The only reason I ask is because technically MOUs aren't legally enforceable, so I want to protect both parties.
As we start to go through and get more hours up and running, I think that's something we can work toward.
And then my third question is, do we have a plan, or are we putting a plan together to get the word out and help encourage individuals to, as the mayor said, relocate from our parks?
And that's a very good question. So part of the street outreach that the homeless team does involves some of that, also working with the different providers to letting them know this resource is available, the center is open, when it's open, and as we expand hours, letting those individuals know, those resource providers and other groups that are interested in the homeless issue know, so that they can help let us know where individuals are and then help us get individuals to this resource center. And again, it's just as we build capacity.
Ryan, as far as informing the public, I field a lot of questions about the homeless because I have the restaurant downtown. And is there going to be a uniform website, Facebook, place we can direct people with their questions, or just bullet points of information so that they know what to do if they see something, what to do, who to contact, so the police don't have to field it? Or
so within community developments, part of the city's website, there's a homeless assistance program section. That information will be populated into it now that we're getting this up and running, as well as other information of ways you can help get people to the right resources. our staff is doing a lot of social media type of work each week to A, dispel myths, but also B, to help individuals know and businesses know how to get people lined up with the right resources and how to get them connected. So that'll be.
And that will also be informing the multiple entities that are sort of.
Absolutely. Yes, it will.
Okay.
And again, a lot of those providers have already been involved in the discussion roundtables, so they know this is a possibility of what's coming, and they're interested and they're supportive. So they're eager to get that information and help distribute the word so well.
I know that was my question next. Almost every summer, I talk to seniors at OBU who are looking for their senior project, and young adults at the school, high school or elementary schools that are wanting to do something for our homeless populations or church groups or things that, with the purpose of having a desire to help and desire to create a better quality of life for our friends struggling with homelessness. And I know that sometimes those best intended efforts can become an issue or a bigger problem. And just, I think I'm super excited about this possibility of that being a direct all those efforts and energies through one entity that can help distribute those energies and those resources to the best of our abilities, but then also, like I said earlier, best made plans sometimes don't always go as we think, and sometimes create bigger problems than as far as trash and loitering and things like that, and so really excited to and hope that we could communicate that to the best of our abilities, that we just not to start a new, why don't go out and create a new wheel, go jump on the one that's already spinning, and how to be, our best about pushing folks and families and individuals that direction. So
Very good point. And that's one of the reasons why we looked at a very in-depth volunteer training program, and to the point even the police department gave input into the curriculum. But also, as volunteers are trained, we can scale up operations at this location, including volunteers from OBU that are students. Some of their students are serving as our interns right now. Mm-hmm. And so that relationship continues to get built as well to help make sure the best laid plans really come to fruition instead of falling off the tracks.
Absolutely.
Anybody got anything else? Any other questions? Well, seeing none, then I'm going to make the motion we approve this. Yeah. And someone would like to join me with a second.
I'll second.
All righty, we have a motion and a second to approve item 7. We will call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8, consideration of an appeal of an administrative order regarding property located at 528 North Cleveland Avenue. And Kevin Moore, is that how you doing, Kevin?
Evening. We brought 528 North Cleveland to a public nuisance hearing on May 12, 2022, and Ms. Scott was present. My recommendation was to get a permit within 48 hours and bring the structure up to code within 180 days. Ms. Scott is appealing my decision for a remodel permit. And if you look at the pictures, this property has looked like this since 2014. So my recommendation right now is to deny the appeal, and we move forward to dilapidation, demo of the dilapidation of the structure. It last had water service 2018.
Any questions for Kevin while we got him?
Did you say it last had water service 2018?
That is correct. That is the last time it was known someone was occupying the structure.
Okay, there's not anybody living there now then?
Do what?
There's not anybody living there now?
No.
Okay.
Do we know if it has electric or gas service currently?
I do not know that. We normally use our city water bill to figure out if there's utilities connect to it.
Right.
We've confirmed it's unoccupied, though.
Correct. She lives at another residence.
Okay.
Do we, I know this might be a silly question, but do we know why the water was disconnected in the first place or not?
Oh, we do not know. I was not part of the staff in 2018.
Okay. Well, she's here, so we'll have that opportunity to ask her.
This may be for the city attorney. Mr. Vondran, have you reviewed this? Is there anything defective with the order?
No, Commissioner. Everything's in order procedurally.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? I don't see. So I believe we were going to allow her to speak to us. Is that correct?
You certainly can, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think we'll give her that opportunity. Thank you, Kevin. Let's see. Ms. Scott, would you like to come up and speak with us? I know some of the commissioners may have questions for you. I want to give you your opportunity to speak to us.
When I bought this house in 1980, it was a shamble. I lived there for several years. I was trying to show you some pictures that I have. When I left, my house was vandalized more than once. The windows across the front had been shot out or something thrown through them. The last time I bought a window pane for it, one pane was nearly $200 from Shawnee Glass. I've asked the police to please patrol my house and watch things, because I know who's doing a big part of that. And as being a minimum wage worker, because I'm not highly educated or anything like that, I do not have the money to keep replacing windows and things that someone keeps knocking out that should pay for them. Also, when my son went over there to start trying to work on the house, is when all this stuff come up again, because the neighbors' trees hang on the roof of the house, and we've asked him many a time, you know, we need to cut these back or something like that because it's tearing up my house. Well, my son was over trying to cut the trees out from between the house. That was his trees, not ours, because I don't have but one tree. And this has been going and ongoing. And when he knew I was gone, he threw stuff in my pool and messed up my pool bottom, and always going in and out of my house. I had 30-something years of things in that house. I've been robbed. I've asked the police to please watch my house. Oh yeah, we will. The only time I get a call is when he calls, is if somebody went over there to mow the yard for me or something like that, and the next thing I know, I'm in trouble again. But recently my son went over there and was pulling the things out of the yard. We was going to start by doing the yard and get it cleaned up and cutting the trees and then repairing the windows. That damage you see to the front is a porch. That house has been totally gutted, rewired, and plumbed since I've lived there. There's not a wall in that house that is the same wall as it was when I bought the house. I hated that house when I bought it. I tried to get my ex-husband to, I don't want this one, I want something else. Bought it, well, I made it into my home because it was my home. I raised my kids there, and I realize and I understand there's nobody that feels worse about that than I do. But when your hands are tied, sometimes you just can't do what you need to do. But if I being told, you get over there and you get this done, and if you don't have it done by that day, we're going to tear it down anyway. Well, they're going to charge me for that too. So it's like I'm in between a rock and a hard spot with it. And all I was asking is, let me go over there and get the yard started. Get the windows. I definitely do not want those windows anymore because I put those in 1990 and they have been nothing but broke. It's like a magnet for somebody that wants to break them. I want to replace those with just some smaller windows, something where I have a view out front. That is actually my porch that you see there. I have pictures. I was trying to find them so I could show you what it looked like when I was through. I want to take that little cap off that's on the front over the door. I want to take it off and just put like, only reason why that was even put there was because when I'd go in the house, if it was raining, the water like just dumped on my head because there was no awning, no porch cover or anything there. So I got these really nice windows at an auction, and I had them for a few years, and I thought, well, I could just like build that in as like a little mud room. And that's what I did, and it was cute. I had an awning over the front of it with a little gate on it, and somebody stole it. They tried to take my gazebo out of the backyard. I actually caught them doing that. And it seems like every time I attempt to do something, and when I go over there, I nearly want to go put myself in Norman because it's just too much to take for something I put my life, heart, and soul into. And I do want to fix it. Like I said, there's nobody on this earth that wants that house fixed more than I do. But I can only do so much. But if I let me get the yard cleaned up, get the front off of it, the structure of the house is good. What you see that's torn up is because when we bought the house, the water tower was dumping on our house. We came in one day and woke up one morning and we thought that our pool had busted because water was rolling over top of the the gas meter and things. Rooster telling over it, and we thought well, when we bought the house, the foundation was bad and it was talking to you. We redone it, got dumped on again. Redone it, got dumped on again. Finally, I took it to court and Judge Henry came to my house and said that I was right. And now, yes, I do know it needs a lot of help, and I know it's going to take probably everything I got to do it. But I am willing to do that. I work graveyard, and it's kind of hard on me to get things done because when you work graveyard, you don't have a life. But I intend to live there. It's the only thing I have left. No, I don't know what else to say that I'm willing to do, but I can't just like jump out and I shouldn't have to be replacing things that doesn't need to be replaced. The house is in good structure. Yes, the front porch, and then my ex put tent on the roof. Well, his friend conned him into doing it. I don't even want to go there. That's probably what started our divorce.
Okay, has anybody got questions for Ms. Scott?
Ma'am, how long has the structure been vacant?
About 6, 7 years, 8 years, something like that.
6 or 7 years?
Yeah, I moved out of state for a while.
Okay. And was it used as a rental property or
No.
it was just vacant?
Right. And
Okay.
when I came home, I got a call, and my house was destroyed. It was robbed. I had my husband was very generous with jewelry. I had some things that I thought was gaudy, and all that was stolen out of the safe. My grandmother's and grandfather's pistols were stolen. Got that all cleared up with the insurance. Got it all fixed again, and then boom, it happens again. Then it happens again. And I'd asked the police if they found the fingerprints on the safe of someone that shouldn't even been in my bedroom, because that's where the safe was at. But still yet they didn't do anything about it. And I just couldn't get any help to support me to keep my house intact. I mean, unless I hired some soldiers or something, I guess, and stand in the front yard. I don't know.
Anybody else got questions?
Is the reason the water is not on right now, you do not have water service, is
It's
that?
because I don't live there, and the water bill is very expensive.
Okay.
So is the electric, and so is the gas. But when I lived there, all the years I lived there, if you want to look, it was all there, and it was paid, and I took care of it. Now, my son did live there for a little while, trying to protect the house, and he has such problems with our neighbor next door. It just become unbearable for him to be there. I'm sorry, I have a grandson in ICU, and I just left the hospital with my stepdaughter. She's in ICU going into it, and it was hard to get back up here.
Sure it was. Very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he's 24 years old, no drugs. He's a virgin. I know you don't believe that. I don't, but he says he is.
Anybody else?
No questions.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
So what do I do now?
Oh, you can just go back to your seat. Go back to your seat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Anything we want to talk about up here?
Definitely a fire hazard.
Yeah. Sad situation.
One of the biggest complaints over and over that the city receives are vacant properties. Since this property isn't occupied at the moment, and property owners have, although I have sympathy, property owners have a due diligence to maintain their property, and when they don't, it puts an unfair burden on their neighbors, and it decreases their property values. And it puts an undue burden on our police department to watch out for a house that is an attraction to vagrants and vandalism. So we never want to see a property get to this point, and when it does, we have to make some hard decisions.
Anybody else, or do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just for
Yes, sir.
clarification, this is an appeal of the administrative decision. And so you would be looking for procedural defect or something clearly against the weight of the evidence with regard to the administrative decision,
Yep.
not making an independent decision with regard
Right.
to the status.
Absolutely. And I think you answered Commissioner Matthews' question that you did not see any defects in any of that.
No procedural defects, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Did the appeal supersede the expiring date of 10 days from 5/16?
The appeal was filed on May 16th.
On May 16th. Okay.
And the appeal would toll those deadlines pending the decision of this body.
Okay.
And so pursuant to Kevin's recommendation and what's contained in the memo, there would be a 48-hour window from the Scott to obtain a remodel permit if the administrative decision were upheld.
So she still has 48 hours from here to obtain a remodel permit.
And then further comply with the 180-day permit period to meet the requirements.
Could I at least show you my house before all my damage right now?
The condition of the home prior to the administrative.
It don't see that it has any relevance. Right, I don't know that that's really have any relevance to what's going on today. I'm sure it was very nice.
So I want to make sure I understand. We deny the appeal. She has 48 hours to do a remodel permit and 180 days to complete the work before we would tear it down. Is that correct? What?
I'll let Kevin answer that.
That is correct. If they're showing me that they are in good faith we make that 180 days and we've made 30% or 40% of the work, I'm not tearing down the structure.
Right.
But if we get to there and they've changed one window, we're moving ahead and we're going to demo the structure.
Ms. Scott, do you understand what Kevin is saying? In 48 hours, if you obtain the permit, you still have 180 days to show progress. Doesn't have to be completely done.
Well,
okay, I can't go back into conversations that you have had. I can tell you, he's telling all of us here, and we will, all of us in this room, will hold him accountable. You, me, all of us. So it's not over as far as they're not going to tear your house down tomorrow. In the next 48 hours, I would encourage you, if you really believe you can get the work done and you really want to bring your house back up to order, I believe Kevin and the city will work with you. You've got 6 months to show progress. And so, we've got a lot of heavy stuff on the agenda. These are the hardest things to do as a commissioner. And so I want to make sure you understand the process and that there's still hope, but you've got to follow through with, so in 48 hours, if you'll file that remodel permit, and I'm happy to talk with you about it afterwards, and then you've got 180 days to show significant progress, and you'll get your house, or you'll keep, it won't get knocked down. I want you can't leave here without understanding that process. I want to make sure you understand that. Can I, Joe, you correct me if I can't, I'll help you file the permit tomorrow if you need help filing it. Like, you just tell me what you need. Like, if you want to fight for it, I understand. So let's talk afterwards and figure out how to get that permit filed, and we'll figure, it's on you to get the work done, right? Or your friends, your family, whoever can help.
But first step is you got to be sure and get that permit filed, because if you miss that deadline, then.
And Mr. Matthews,
not
I
good.
explained the same thing, and it's on record, and we record all of our hearings.
Sure.
I can't go back. I'm not there. I just want to make sure, clearly she wants her home, and if it's any way possible.
And that's why my recommendation was a remodel permit and not a
Right.
demo.
So, okay.
And ma'am, just to, we've talked about this a lot, the improvements that you were wanting to make to the home would have required this permit anyways. And so
Yes.
based on what you're saying you're desiring to do, this permit would be necessary for that desire, even if there was not a pending demo on your home. So that's something that we just want to make sure that you understand that you're committing to do this and committing to put the work in and fix the things, which is amazing, and nobody wants to take your home from you, but we have a set of guidelines and rules and understandings that have to be met, and the very first thing is that permit has to be obtained. And
Is that at the planning office?
Yeah, annex building,
Okay.
yes. And my recommendation when I tell them, everybody that gets a remodel permit, 50% in 180 days, inside and out. 50% is not complete. That's just showing me that you're getting it going. The
Good
first
faith.
steps would get the building secured and clean the property, because as you can see in the pictures, if we was to have a fire on that property, it would spread pretty fast, how tall the grass is and all the debris.
Alrighty. Anybody got anything else? Or do we have a motion? A motion to uphold the staff recommendation, or?
What is the motion here?
That was my question, the way that's worded.
Denying the appeal. Yeah, that's, I think you're right on the money, Mark.
Say that again?
I think we're denying the appeal. Isn't that basically what we're doing?
Yeah.
So now it's either to grant the appeal or to deny the appeal
Right.
would be the appropriate motion.
Yes.
So to deny the appeal gives her those options that
Right.
have been laid out.
That's a yes vote. That's a yes vote.
So-
A yes vote.
And then it,
Yeah.
I mean, even if we,
Did you,
no, I'm
you
good.
good? Okay.
it's just confusing wording.
The motion to deny the appeal would be to affirm
Right.
the staff's administrative decision, which would then trigger the options we've been discussing.
So entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, sir.
To deny the appeal. That's the
All
right
right.
word, which gives her those options.
Right. Okay, we have a motion.
I'll say.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the appeal, discussed there in item 8. So we, as Joe said, a yes vote would affirm that denial. Make sure everybody's on the same page. So we will call the question. Okay, motion passes 7-0. So be sure and get your permit in the next 48 hours if that's your desire, okay? And Commissioner Matthews has said that he'll talk with you after the meeting if you'd like to stick around.
Some of you here have my cell phone number. If she has to step out to go to the hospital, would someone please pass it to her?
All righty. Item 9, consideration of an ordinance of the City of Shawnee, Oklahoma, amending Chapter 7, Buildings and Building Regulations, and providing for severability, codification, and repealer. Mr. Barkheimer, how are you tonight?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Mr. Mayor?
Doing well.
This is really for the next two items, so item 9 and 10. So similar to Chapter 5, the urban chicken permit that we did last meeting, this item is very much a housekeeping item. As we've stated previously, we're trying to clean up the city fee schedule and remove some of those fees that are codified in ordinance and place them within the city fee schedule.
Right.
So this is more of that. In 2012, the state established a standard fee due to the Oklahoma Uniform Building Code Commission. We've been charging that pass-through fee, and tonight we're codifying that into the city's fee schedule. Similar, we're recodifying some of the existing fees for HVAC into the fee schedule. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on this one, but it doesn't represent a change to current practices for the last decade. So,
Just where that fee will show up now.
Right,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Just like, I think it was last meeting, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the OUBCC fee is $4, and then we have a 50-cent service charge, so it totals out as $4.50. So.
Yeah. Simple enough. Anybody got questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Move to approve item 9.
Thank you, sir. Daniel. And Darren. All right, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Shawnee, Oklahoma, amending Chapter 7, Buildings and Building Regulations, and also providing for severability, codification, and repealer.
Thank you, sir. All righty, we have a motion and a second. We will call the question on item 9. And motion passes 7-0. Item 10, consideration of resolution of Mayor and City Commission of the City of Shawnee, Oklahoma, updating the city fee schedule by amending Chapter 7 Buildings and Building Regulations. So you're up again, but I bet it's the same thing.
Yep, it's
so.
the same thing. This is a resolution supporting the ordinance that you guys just passed. So with that, I'll answer any questions, but I don't suspect that you have any.
Anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you,
item
ma'am.
10.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Joe, you were up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution of the mayor and city commission of the city of Shawnee, Oklahoma, updating the city fee schedule by amending portions of Chapter 7 Buildings and Building Regulations.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion, a second, for approval of item 10. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 11, consideration of a resolution updating the city fee schedule by setting the monthly rates and fees for solid waste services pursuant to subsection A, section 23 to 38, Article 2, Chapter 23 of the City Code, and providing for the readoption of the city fee schedule in whole. And looks like Casey's up. How are you?
I'm good. How are y'all?
Great.
As you know, March of this year, the City Commission approved a $1 hazardous waste fee for all residential accounts. It was recently discovered that the hazardous waste fee was inadvertently added to the additional polycart fee. This extra fee has affected approximately 1,292 accounts. Approval of the proposed resolution will remove the additional fee from the city fee schedule and allow staff to adjust the affected accounts. We anticipate all fees being adjusted within 30 days as a credit to the account.
Okey-doke, so another housekeeping item, sounds like.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else got any questions? Would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 11.
And I'll second. Was that you, Travis?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. You're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution updating the city fee schedule by setting the monthly rates and fees for solid waste services pursuant to subsections A, section 23-38, Article 2, Chapter 23 of the City Code, and providing for the readoption of the city fee schedule in whole.
All right, thank you, sir. So we have a motion and a second for approval of item 11. We will call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Now we're to item 12, administrative reports. First is on fire department staffing. Andrea, it is your turn. How are you this evening? You've been quiet.
I have been very quiet. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. How are you?
Doing well.
I would like to take this opportunity to provide some background information on the recent closings of Fire Station Number 2. You may have seen newspaper articles and Facebook posts and such. Let me start off by talking about the staffing levels. Currently, the City of Shawnee Fire Department has a total of 54 employees, of which 48 are dedicated to fire suppression. Fire suppression is the division that provides the primary response to any of our fire calls. The fire suppression division is made up of 3 shifts. They're designated as green, red, and blue shifts. The current staffing is 48 full-time firefighters, which provides 16 staff per shift. The minimum staffing levels to safely operate the 3 stations we currently have is 12 firefighters. We have a higher position count versus the required staffing levels, so we can provide our firefighters with some time off for medical leave, vacation, family medical leave, or attending training sessions. And before we take a closer look at what our neighboring cities with non-volunteer fire departments are doing, there's something I would like to bring your attention to. Shown in the light red are the city limits, which cover 44 square miles. That, of course, is our primary response area for fire suppression.
The Shawnee Fire Department, however, is also responsible for a much larger fire district outside of the city limits, and that area is currently shown in the darker red. The fire district consists of the city limits and then the larger area around it, for a total of 116 square miles of coverage. With the help of this slide you see right now, I want to provide you with several metrics of how the city of Shawnee shapes up when compared to neighboring entities, again, non-volunteer fire departments in neighboring cities. As you can see, although Shawnee has a higher ratio of firefighters per 1,000 residents, here shown as 1.5, which is the top spot among our neighbors, we also have a higher number of annual calls per firefighters, again, 116 square miles. So we're sitting right at 125 calls per firefighter per year, which is among the top 3 for our neighbors. Again, of importance, it is that very, very large fire district for which our fire department is responsible. In regard to Shawnee Fire Department funding, we are pulling from multiple revenue sources. You may remember the budget presentation this evening. The general fund, it provides primarily for personnel expenditures. Fire department allocation is based on funding availability and needs. The allocation includes also a dedicated 1/16 of 1% of a permanent sales tax. Dedicated is another 1/8 of 1% of a temporary sales tax that can only be used for capital expenditures, not for personnel cost. A portion of 7/8 of 1% of a permanent sales tax, again, capital expenditures only, is shared for the fire department allocation. In the current fiscal year, the fire department had received $216,000 out of that capital allocation. And then furthermore, a portion of 1% of a countywide sales tax equally divided among the 12 fire departments. So all of the volunteer fire departments and our fire department received just 1/12 of that particular share. That is also one of our funding sources. Now, what I would really like to point to is the fact that a lot of these additional sources are for capital funding expenditures only. That 1/16 of 1% provides us with an annual $422,954, which is about 10%, a little less than 10% of all of the personnel costs. The rest comes out of our general fund budget. And you may remember hearing Jacob say that public safety specifically is 60% of our general fund budget. Fire department is almost 25% of our general fund budget. And in total, all personnel costs account for over 70% of our general fund budget. Something that you may have heard as well is increasing call volumes. In 2003, we ran just under 3,000 calls a year. 2013, that was 4,600 calls a year. 2021, it was under 6,000. So there is definitely an increase in the number of calls, fire calls. A lot of that is tied to the growth that is happening outside of the city limits in the expanded fire district. As new homes and businesses and industries are developed outside of the city limits, Shawnee's fire department is responsible for the fire response there, and this increased demand for fire protection does not currently come with any additional funding. Staffing levels, the last time we increased staffing levels was back in 2013. Through the assistance at that time of a SAFER grant, Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response is what that stands for. The division grew from 42 firefighters to 48 firefighters, and at that time we also adjusted our minimum staffing levels from 11 to 12. These 6 additional positions allowed the staffing per shift to increase from 14 firefighters to 16. Since then, we have not added any additional firefighters. Information is currently circulating about recent temporary closures. Again, fire station number 2. This occurs whenever the city falls below those minimum staffing levels of 12. At that time, it is not safe to operate an entire fire station or run a fire engine with, less than 4 personnel. Just to let you know, these 3 additional positions that are currently requested, and I had, as you may remember, I could not grant those 3 additional position requests just simply because we do not have enough recurring funding that we can use for operations and personnel cost. It would bring the total fire suppression division to 51 firefighters, 17 per shift. Adding these 3 additional firefighters would greatly reduce the rate of closures at Station 2. However, it also requires that we find $230,000 additional dollars. And that is very difficult without actually looking at additional funding sources. Municipalities in Oklahoma are extremely restricted in terms of their funding sources, and we have very few choices for urgent funding. A SAFER grant would provide that additional funding for some time, but it has a lag time, potentially up to a year before we could receive such a grant. And then, of course, it would ultimately have to be replaced with a permanent funding source once the grant runs out. The utility account fee can be quickly implemented, but it may hinder critical water and wastewater infrastructure investments. Anytime there is an increase in one of the construction costs for our ongoing plant updates, we would look to utility accounts in order to be able to potentially come up with that additional funding. That is definitely something that has to be considered. Additional dedicated sales tax requires a vote to the people and would result in higher taxation overall than several of our peer cities. And then, of course, the public safety protection tax district that was passed by the legislature last year, that is an option. It would also require a vote of the people at a higher margin. There we would need to receive a 60% vote of the people in order to be able to put this property tax related funding source into play. Again, this presentation this evening was just to give you some background information on our current staffing, how we compare to other peer cities, why we are somewhat different in terms of our very large fire district, which also results in a much larger number of calls. And again, for these additional firefighter positions, we have to find an additional funding source. The fact that we're already sitting at 73% of the general fund budget for personnel cost, dedicating additional funding to, and I understand public safety is very, very important, but we will have to find another funding source to be able to do that.
Andrea, if I understood you correctly, sorry, I just jumped in.
No, you're good. Go right ahead. I was just going to ask if...
Are you saying that we need $230,000 of additional funding each year? That's what we're looking for 2 personnel or 3?
That is for 3 personnel, and that is just for the next year. That was calculated out with equipment and, of course, the personnel cost for next year. So the year thereafter, it would increase appropriately.
Right, so we need to find a sustainable funding source.
Correct.
Not to put you on the spot for math. It's okay if you have to get back to me. On the property tax option, have you guys kind of run the numbers about would that just be for the citizens in that area? Have you run the numbers about how much that would increase everyone's?
We have not yet run the numbers of how much that would increase. It would give us the option of going, of taking up to 3 mil on property taxes, but only for properties within the city limits. So again, it would not account for any of the new homes coming in on the periphery of Shawnee. We can certainly calculate that number and share it with the commission at the next meeting.
So who's footing the bill outside the city limits? Yeah. For the vast, I mean, more than half of the calls.
1/12 of the 1% county sales tax, and I know I have the fire chief behind me. Tony,
think I saw him.
can you let us know how often we're successful in actually having some insurance payment cover the fire suppression cost?
Any funds we receive are less than 1% of insurance collections, and we're only able to charge at the FEMA rate, which is 1/10 of 1% of any vehicle we utilize at that scene.
So how do we shrink that area?
You'd probably have to get the county commissioners involved, all the other fire departments involved, because if you shrink the area, somebody's going to have to assume responsibility for that area.
But we're here to represent the city limits of Shawnee and the citizens in the city limits of Shawnee and figure out how to fund you guys correctly and safely.
Yes.
So somebody outside of this area drug us in and they need to assist, or
Well, from what we could research, the best we could find was back in the 70s, all the departments got together, drew out the fire districts, and then it was voted on by the commission for, county commission for approval. And that's where it has stood since then.
So could we, like in 2050, someone stand up there and say, well, back in the 2020s, they got together, all the fire chiefs got together and redrew the districts? I mean, to Commissioner Rutherford's point, like, we're stewards of the city. I mean, respectfully, you know, they chose to live outside the city limits, and
that's correct.
We're the stewards of the city's dollars and the city's resources. I mean, I don't know that it's possible. It's just, it is a little shocking to see that, you know, and how many of these are true structure fire calls versus calls an ambulance could make? Like, are we doing a lot of lift assist and that kind of stuff in
Anything
county?
inside our response district, we respond to just like we would inside city limits. And we've tried reducing those over the years. Nursing home, assisted facilities and stuff, we've actually cut those calls out, which probably reduced our call volume by around 2,000 calls. We would probably be pushing 8,000 to 9,000 calls right now if we haven't started thinning these calls out over the years.
Do we have a breakdown of number, like the calls that are inside the city limits and calls that are outside, just for reference?
With me right now, no, but I can break it out for you by district.
Do you have any idea ballpark, Tony?
I'd say probably in the neighborhood of 70% of the calls inside the city limits, 30% are outside. And that's just roughly based on structure fires. We had about 98 structure fires in the last 12 months. That's doubled in the last 10 years. And the majority of those are inside our city limits. And anything outside the city limits, we still request mutual aid from all the volunteer departments to assist us with this. And if we can turn a call to another department, we do that also, so we can turn the trucks back into our response area, our primary response area, which is city limits. So if there's something out around the lake, Bethel, McLeod, the other departments are called also, and if they can respond to it earlier than we can, then they take the call and we return to service.
That 70% that you said is in the city limits, what percentage of that is fire and what percentage of that is ambulance calls?
About 65% of all of our calls are EMS calls.
Ambulance calls?
Yes, sir.
Sounds like the ambulance company needs to put an extra truck or two on with personnel, and we can save our tax dollars doing their business.
Ours is not for transport. That's the contract you have with the ambulance service. Ours is just for first response, because a lot of the times we can make it there earlier than the ambulance can.
So the three additional What kind of, you know, which me and Patrick talked a little bit about overtime, the guys are having to call back in for overtime. What does that figure into the equation? Because I'm sure you didn't figure that in the $230,000 a year. What do we spend on overtime that it may trim a bunch of that off?
I looked at quite a few numbers. We did not trim overtime. I know that we had 150 some thousand scheduled for this year. We've gone over. And we looked at carrying that overage forward. So we actually would not reduce that overtime because at this point in time, we're using it, but we're still not at the staffing levels.
Because I'm sure you're calling people back in
Yes.
that are normally be off.
Yeah, we're calling in for overtime, which has exceeded the 150,000 we had budgeted for it. And we still had, even with the overtime we've had in the last 14 to 15 months, and I did this based off when we started our budget in February, 54 closures of the department, of the station, because we weren't able to get anybody back for overtime.
And we don't have mandatory callback, right?
No, sir.
Okay.
So if somebody calls in sick last minute and no one answers the phone, then we're just short.
Yes.
That doesn't fly around my place much.
What other questions you guys got?
On the utility bill, it's like between $1 and $2, right?
At 230,000 per year with the number of utility accounts we have, it would equate to about $1.65 per account per month. So just under $20 for this first year.
I guess the problem I have with that, the city of Shawnee, I mean, the citizens of Shawnee are paying for the whole county.
And I am certain that back in 1970s, because even at that time, we were the only non-volunteer firefighting department, fire department. We were given the largest area because we have a career fire department. Now, nobody anticipated all of these houses to be built in the periphery and out in the county, which has a significant impact on our fire response now.
So do CPN, Sac and Fox, Kickapoos, everybody that's in the county, do they fund some of this also, or do we get anything from them?
At this time, the Kickapoo, we do have a contract with the Kickapoo tribe.
But just the housing additions in general that are going up, North Rock Creek area,
Yeah.
that's county, it's our response. They're not footing the bill for our fire department.
1/12 of 1% sales tax, that's it.
Right, which is,
And for capital expenditures only.
so how do we redraw the lines?
Yeah.
Or tell them no.
Mr. Vaughn?
This was an informational item, not for any decisions, just simply because this is a very tricky topic.
Right.
I have taken notes. We will calculate the millage and how much that would bring in. But again, any option other than the utility rate would not be immediate. And the SAFER grant is not permanent, so we will have to find another source of recurring funding with which we can fund personnel cost.
So first option would be, or a option would be the utilities. We would have to make that decision on whether to add to the water bill to support 3 firefighters. That if we don't redraw the lines, that's not a permanent fix. We need more than that. You know, even if we can shrink our zone, and that's going to be put on us to decide for everyone. So that's going to take a little time for people to think about. The property tax hasn't been done before, to my knowledge, because it's new.
Yep.
And it requires a 60% vote of the people, but that could be a substantial boost to our safety, to all of our safety.
For all of public safety, so it would not just be for the fire department, it would also be for the police department. And in light of our general fund budget dedicating 60% to public safety, that may be a long-term consideration.
Would the people in our fire district, including county, be involved in those meals, or are we just taxing the city again?
It was written in such a way that it would only be within the city limits.
Yeah, we're in the same.
Can the county do the same thing? Like, could the county pass the same kind of measure?
The county already has access to property taxes. We do not as a city. So this was specifically written for cities only.
Can we do a combination of some of the suggested measures? Like if we did a utility thing soon, increase soon, and then looked towards property tax, because we'd have to put that on, it would have to be voted on not in June, but in November, if we decided to go that route. So then we still have until November to fund.
And I would still recommend that we look into a safer grant to help us with the initial cost, but we have to ultimately find a recurring funding source that will replace the safer grant as well.
So we could do the grant and an additional suggestion.
Have we done that grant in the past?
Yes, we have. That was actually the grant that allowed us to go from, from 42 firefighters to 48 firefighters in 2013.
2013.
But it's a one-year grant, right? 3?
It depends.
Okay, sorry.
The grant's set up to, if you're approved for the grant, it's set up to fund it for 3 years. 75% of the cost of the firefighter is taken care of on the first and second year, and then 65 on the third year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then you assume all cost on the individual on the fourth year.
In a perfect, amazing world, how quickly could we go from this conversation to receiving that grant?
The grant won't even open until October. We probably would not receive notification until after the first of the year.
Okay. So we need to do something now and then walk towards all of these other options as quickly as we can.
And let's be honest, we're talking about hiring, going from 48 to 51. Truth is, if we're looking in the future, we need a station on the north side, we need a substation at the lake, like, we've got, like, let's not just fight over 3 and yay, we fixed it. We've got to figure out long-term, like, what do we do?
For some information on that, as far as adding a station, you're looking at 15 personnel, 5 per shift. And to give you a little historical on that, we are at 48 personnel. In 1978, we were at 45 personnel suppression. That's the limited growth we've had on suppression.
It leads to a much, much larger discussion because the growth continues to go northwards. We will have limited coverage because Fire Station 3 is our northernmost fire station. So this is just a discussion of today's problem. There are many, many issues to consider moving forward with growth. So this is just one of several fire department discussions we'll have to have over the years.
One more point of clarification for me is when we're talking on the taxing district, that's for only homes inside the city limits, right?
That is correct.
So growing the city limits would grow our tax district.
That is correct as well.
Thank you. And maybe, no, never mind. I'll be quiet. I was going to say we are behind where we should have been expanding the city limits.
That is an internal discussion that we've already started.
Thank you.
So we're in the process of hiring a firefighter now. I think we're down 1 head count is my understanding.
That is correct. We currently have an open position and we've received quite a bit of interest in that particular position.
And if we add the 3 that are requested, then basically that's 1 on each shift. how often would that have avoided the situation that we have now?
I don't believe I understood your question
If
correctly.
we added one more person,
Mhm.
how many times would that fire station have been open?
Probably more so than it has been. That position was not filled when it became vacant last December.
Because if we're adding a position, we're not adding a slot for time off too, correct? Like we're adding an active duty, or maybe that's
no.
something we have to talk to the union about. Like
No,
our
that
intent is to add active duty.
correct. That has been agreed with as part of the most recent collective bargaining agreement. So that would not change just because we would hire 3 additional firefighters if that was the commission's desire.
Each shift has 16. If they're fully staffed, we're down 1. So that means every time that the station has been closed, we've gotten below that 12. So we've had,
Due to vacation time, training, potential medical leave, or family medical leave.
okay.
Is it too late if we come up with something, if we charged you with having something before us at the next meeting, could it be included in the budget? Or is that too quick?
We could potentially include that as an item in the budget. We can also come back immediately after the budget's been approved and make an amendment.
Oh, sure. I mean, the budget's just a plan. It can always be changed.
Correct. That would be an additional appropriation once we determine that we have an additional revenue source.
Mhm. What are the questions you guys got? Cammy?
Mayor?
Anybody? Yes.
Just for clarification.
Yes, sir.
Your question a while ago about the number of days that that station may be closed if we added an additional person?
Yes, sir.
Was that in regards to the 3 personnel, 1 per shift?
Yeah, I was wondering how many more days would we have been open if we'd had the 1?
By adding 1 person to each shift now,
Yes, sir.
we'd actually be able to reduce
Just the one open one.
The current open position.
the current open one, or the current, or adding the 3?
In addition, the 3. The 3.
Okay, so you are asking about the 3 personnel.
But that's a good question either way. Do you know?
If by adding 3 personnel, 1 per shift, you would
Yes,
have
sir.
reduced the closing of the station by about 70%.
Okay. That's good to
And
know.
by adding 1 person back on the current opening we have, you probably would have brought it back to about 20% reduction is all you would have gained out of that.
Okay.
Because most of the time we're dropping to 11-man minimum.
Right.
And that 1 shift, the red shift, is at 15, so with the additional 3, that makes them more opportune to be below minimum manning.
Right, absolutely.
And with the additional, if you added 1 per shift, you would be able to bring that up and reduce it by about 70% of your closures.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief.
Are there any creative solutions we could work out with the fire suppression guy? I know that would mean agreement with the unions on creative ways, like on trainings or physicals, and like how we're doing those kind of things that would, like, let them do their physicals on their day off and pay them for it, but it doesn't reduce our, are we looking at creative ideas? And maybe, I'm not a fire guy, I'm just
We've,
brainstorming on things I've heard and things I know, like.
No, we've worked in the past. We used to send 2 personnel to physicals at a time. Now we just send 1 at a time.
But that puts us a man down, right?
Yes, for at least 6 hours. And so we've taken that back to 1. Some other options, that would be something that the city management would have to negotiate with the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, that's, I mean.
Any other questions or any other requests? Or
So 51 would get us closer to being out of this dangerous zone that we're in. What would get us flush and really make us be actively working towards never having a station closed?
You would need about 19 personnel just to maintain the 3 stations we have currently.
19 additional?
No, 19 total per shift.
From 16 to 19.
Yeah. So you're looking about,
So
you'd be needing at least
9.
9 additional personnel
Okay.
that would adequately man the 3 stations.
plus the long-term discussion of all the other stations that we need.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where most don't realize that by create a station one-time cost, but the additional, with 3 shifts, you're looking at 15 personnel.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess you will bring something to us at next meeting?
So what I have in terms of action items is to calculate out how much 3 mil for the properties within the city limits of Shawnee would be for the public safety protection district tax. And
How much it would increase
how-
utility?
correct, the utility increase, and then also the number that Tony gave in terms of in-city limit calls versus out-of-city limit calls. I know that we're currently collecting fire call information by district, and we will confirm that number at the next city commission meeting as well.
Okay. Anything else?
Probably need to have some pretty hard conversations with our county counterparts.
Yep.
And again, just remember that we are the only career fire department, but the continued growth outside of city limits has put us into a significant bind.
Yes, it has. All righty. Everybody good? I don't want to let them loose if we still need them. Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank all of you guys. All righty. Let's see, our second 12B is Santa Fe Depot, Mr. Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. We were asked to give you just a brief update on the input received so far and an overview of the process regarding the visioning project for the Santa Fe Depot. So we first outlined the process at the May 2nd commission meeting. So far, we've included a webpage describing the project with a lot of background information, some examples of reuse ideas that we've seen elsewhere in the research that we've done. We've included a link to the special commission meeting that you did in December regarding the depot, as well as the GH2 study regarding the building envelope and the interior. We also included a link for an online survey, and it was very short. It's about 2 minutes, 6 roughly questions. Some are multiple choice even. And then we've included a series of town hall meetings. And those are really a series of discussion stations that people can get additional information at, circulate around, look at potential ideas, get additional information. And those are staffed by multiple staff members from the city, and each station is designed to give you a piece of the puzzle. You can circulate through at your pace, and then that gave you an opportunity at the end to submit a card with the chance to write questions or comments, but also do a visual preference survey of potential ideas for reuse options. We've also done a meeting with some community partners, and we'll do a couple more between now and toward the end of the month. With regard to the town hall meetings, as I said, they were a series of walk-through stations, almost like you would see at a ODOT open house type of meeting. The boards basically told a story of what's there now, how we got to this point, what the existing conditions are, and then again, what the potential funding sources are, but also what the reuse options could be. And the reuse options were based on research staff had done already last fall, but also over the winter and into this spring. We also had a handout. They gave a series of FAQs, or frequently asked questions, to help address different background items in the discussion process. And for one of those, for example, was, as we've stated in the beginning, in the intro of the meetings, but also continued to stipulate, is it a question of if the city's going to remodel the depot or not? And that's not what we've said, is that's not the question. The city is intent on remodeling the depot, doing the repair work and restoration, but we want to have a good game plan to go forward to present to different funding agencies, depending on what uses are definitely recommended out of this process. So here are the remaining meeting dates. We've done a couple of town halls already, and they were well attended, especially the first two. We've done the different days and different times in order to accommodate varying schedules. We've also included a listening session that will be tomorrow night at 5:30, and that will be more of what the public comments that you typically see at the commission meetings would entail. Someone coming to the podium, stating their comments, and then sitting down and letting the next person speak. The meetings on the 8th and the 9th will be similar to the 3 meetings we've done already, where it will be more of the town hall type walkthrough type of session. And then on June 20th, we'd like to present you a draft of the results, just to give you an idea of this is what the community thinks. So, as I mentioned, we had an online survey, and what you see up there on your screens are the results as of June 1st. So 581 survey respondents participated in the survey. If a person chose not to answer a specific question, they couldn't be forced to answer it. They could just skip it. Some of the questions were multiple choice answers. If you've participated in that survey, thank you. But the one question that we provided here with multiple option answers was a series of potential options for what the depot could be for use options. One of them was a museum, then there was a series of others. As you see, 482 people as of June 1st indicated a museum was the most appropriate reuse. 848 indicated other functions were the most appropriate. So roughly 2 to 1. We're going to keep the survey open until June 10th. I will say if you take the survey, it is very short. It can be done in about 2 minutes. And it gives you an opportunity just to make comments at the end. Instead of just answering a yes or no or clicking options, you can actually make comments. We also mentioned the visual preference survey regarding the potential reuse options at the town hall meetings. So people who attended were given a half-size sheet of paper with the ability to rank their choices. Retail was one function, passenger transit, as you see, office and restaurant, art gallery, event space. And those were presentation boards sitting out at the station, out in the lobby of this building. So you can see how people voted as far as preference for good, great, bad idea. Overall, and some people just said, it's not, I don't know, and left it at that. And that's okay. So there was one station where people could drop the survey response, another box where people could drop their question or comment cards. A number of people indicated that came to the town hall meetings they'd like to see a museum. As meetings went on and we've gotten to the middle of this process, more and more people are beginning to talk about how things could work together. And does it have to be an all or nothing option between one use or another? Which is exciting to hear that conversation. That means we are truly open and willing to have a healthy discussion about how best to use a historic icon in this community. And I mentioned the question and comment cards. This was a very popular function in the town hall meeting so far. They got the most use of the pens that we let people borrow. And amazingly, most pens came back, which is another good sign for, just saying. So here's some of the, if I were to group these into categories, here's some of the comment categories we've heard. The building needs to be maintained, but that building also needs to draw people downtown. Why has the city waited for so long? What's the repair plan? What's the plan going forward? And that really was epitomized in a number of comments about, are you going to do something with the building or not? And the answer again is yes. It's not a matter of if we're going to do it, it's a matter of how and what comes after that. And that's a message we're going to staff to keep reiterating. We want to do something with this building, but we want to make sure that whatever we do uses the taxpayer dollars in the most appropriate manner and stretches them as far as possible while helping preserve this building. Some have said the museum is the only option and the only one that allows for public viewing on the inside. Again, in the last meeting, one of the comments as far as a trend that started to occur was, well, if we put this with this, you could do this way. So it's about how we design the inside and rehab it. Can uses be combined? Why can't they be combined? Why can't the history be included with the new uses? Again, it's all about how we do it when we get to the design part. I think it can be done. And I like to see I'm excited about the trend of people having that discussion and trying to see how things can be done. There have been questions about, is the city trying to take this off the National Register? No. We want to make sure we preserve this building as it was built, as it is now, a historic icon, and maintain those standards. And then one question that, as if I would put this in a category, can the city work with the Potawatomi County Historic Society? What I've seen so far is a willingness to continue to have a healthy discussion about how best to use this structure and what it can be used for and how it can help be a catalyst type of project in this part of the downtown. And that's exciting to me. And again, this is just a quick overview of the meeting so far. We have 3 left. I'm excited to see the input. I will continue to be available to answer questions and do meetings with community groups. They've generated a lot of feedback. So with that, I'd be open to any questions or comments that you have.
Anybody got a question or comment? I've run into a number of folks that have been to the meetings, and they've really liked the format because they basically have unlimited access to you guys and can talk as long as they want. So that's been very much appreciative. At least the folks that I talked with really enjoyed it.
And you can pick your staff member.
Yeah, or you can hit them all.
You can. There are no bingo cards for that, by the way. I'll just warn you in advance.
I appreciate you adding the public comment portion as well, because I know a lot of people wanted that also. So that's coming up.
That'll be tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
That listening session will be tomorrow here in the commission chambers.
Hopefully we'll have a good crowd for that.
I anticipate we will.
Yeah. Anybody got anything else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update. Alrighty. Item 13, new business.
No new business.
Thank you, ma'am. Alrighty, commissioners' comments. How about we start with the short timer down there?
We have a lot on our plates.
Yes, we do.
And I can't help but think, when I was sitting here, they were mentioned about a new fire station out north, on the north end of our Ward 6, actually. We have property where the police firing range is already. So maybe we could use a corner of that firing range for a new fire station. We wouldn't have property expense of buying. And again, I appreciate the the budget and bringing it to us earlier. And my blessings to the rest of you on coming up with solutions. And I think, what have I got? 2 more meetings to go, I believe. So, good luck.
Thank you, sir. Gee, thanks, Benny.
Thanks.
Fire station, no doubt, is inevitable out north. We have so many rooftops out there that we're going to have to cross this bridge at some point. It's only a matter of time. I think a lot of us just figuring out how to fund it. Budget, appreciate the hard work, appreciate being able to look at it early, and appreciate the conservative attitude that the city has taken forward. I think hopefully it's way conservative and we end up with a lot of funds that we can utilize for something. That's really about the house of the lady, I think between churches and different entities, I think everybody would pitch in to help her. I'm just still questioning if she understands the process. I don't know. Can we reach out to her on our end, or we just got to wait till she comes to us?
I know that our permit technician is most helpful. If we can just get her into the door, we can help her.
Okay.
I think she left her number.
I think, you feel for her, but no doubt it's been neglected for years and years and years. I'm still questioning. I know Kevin's probably turned the water on. Who knows where water's going to spray? It's going to be a mess. And it may not be worth saving, but needs somebody to go out there and physically look at it and kind of figure out some kind of budget for it. Because you hate for her to go spend money on it with inevitable having to tear it down.
Yeah.
She needs a little help. That's all I got.
Glad to see some guys from the museum here, and hopefully we can still keep making progress with the discussions that are going on and come up with some creative ideas that's going to help the Historical Society, help that part of downtown Shawnee, keep the building, maintain it, and the ideas that keep coming in, it's like, never thought of that. That's great. So hopefully we can get that momentum and find a funding source and get some things going. The fire department we've got to find a long-term solution, a long-term plan. We can do a short-term fix, probably. It's going to be burdensome to us, but the fact that the city limits, people that live in the city limits are footing the bill for so many outside the city limits. Now, I wasn't aware of the volume and the size of our district and the calls that they ran. So, I was riding around yesterday afternoon north of town, just cruising the roads. The amount of new housing out there is a lot. And we are the ones responsible for it, or the guys on the back row over there are the ones responsible for that, and we don't get the revenue, so we're footing the bill. So I think we're really going to need to look at how to resolve that issue, whether it's with the county, whether it's the county homeowners, with something, but we shouldn't have to foot the bill totally. I mean, they are a full-time department. We have the full-time, but we're getting 1/12 of 1 cent. Well, if that's the same amount that the volunteer departments are getting, there's something messed up with that agreement that's 50 years old that we need to address, and how we need to do that and how quickly we can do that. It's not going to be easy, but we need a long-term fix for this to get our guys the manpower and the equipment that they need. We've got remodel plans coming up for Station 3 probably, and Station 1. That's, or 2 trucks. One, two trucks upcoming out of the half-cent sales tax that the city of Shawnee again voted on, passed, and we're doing that with that money. But we can't provide personnel with it. We can just provide the capital. and so much of it's getting used outside. I'm repeating myself. That's just so irritating. I didn't know that. So hopefully we can resolve that issue and find a long-term fix. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
And the understanding that even if we do our best to get to the 51, that still would not prevent the fire station from closing, and it has apparently been having to close for quite some time now, is eye-opening. Also, knowing that we've, in 2013, I believe is what it was, that we moved to 16 in full-time staff in per shift, and our calls have increased by almost 1,000 is just unbelievable. And with no more personnel being added, that's just crazy to me. That they've been able to continue to do their jobs well and not have anybody not had a lot of catastrophic injuries or things happen because of being overworked and understaffed and all those things. And I know it's easy to sit right here and and say that, but I think the conversations have been started to how to be creative, how to be intentional about looking for those funds, and then how to do it without putting a burden on the city residents, but also doing it in a way where growing up in a rural community, that anytime you called fire for an assistance outside the city limit, there was a known fee that was going to be charged to you. And lots of times individuals would not call because they didn't want to pay the fee, and there would be greater property damage and other issues because they were like, well, I'm not going to call. And whoever made the phone call was the one that was on the hook for the bill, which we don't want to run into something like that. I think it needs to be intentional. I think it needs to be in a partnership with the county and a partnership with the neighborhoods and the associations and in all the things. And I agree. I don't believe that the residents in the city limits should be the only ones making this happen. But then also, I know that we can't just wait. We need to get moving on this as quickly as we can. And then also, even though it's one of our largest budgets, the PD's the same way. I know that there's stood on a street corner talking to officers while they had been put in a bind because either somebody was down or somebody was transporting a citizen to a different part of the city or to out of town because of issues that they were having, and how quickly we go from being safe and being cared for to being in a bind. And that's just it's tough, and I hate it, but we're doing the best we can with what we got. But I don't think we should do the best we can with what we got. I think we should be walking towards that safe number on the regular. I was really excited to be asked to set in some of the Santa Fe Depot conversations, and although they started out on two opposite ends of the world, we have walked closer together, and I really can't wait to see what we can do as far as creating a great partnership to continue moving towards honoring the amazing individuals that work so hard to preserve that history, but then also honoring the individuals that are helping to support that, and then the future young people. I've got pictures of me and my son whenever he was a little bitty guy, sitting on the a caboose that you're not supposed to be sitting on, but we do it anyway. But it's there, and and had that gone away, that would be a memory that we wouldn't have together. And so I truly hope that we can all come together and have that for many generations to come. Thank you for the budget. Thank you for working so hard. Thank you all for giving this to us early. I know it's difficult to do such a thing, and I know there's a lot of things that we're going to have to go back through, and we've got the opportunity to do that and look at this. City staff, as always, thank you for working and doing your jobs. We know that it's difficult. Sometimes you're asked to do things that nobody wants to do, like the situation with the lady in her house, or the just making those calls. And I know that it's no fun. It stinks in your butt, but they're we've got to do our best to obtain a standard and hold that standard across the line. And so thank you for working hard at maintaining that. Oh, goodness. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, other commissioners. Benny, I've not known you very long, but I've appreciated you so much in the times that you've been here, and thank you for your hard work and the intentional effort and your calm voices and you're walking forward, and we're gonna miss seeing you over there. So.
We had a lot of hard topics tonight, and I think the theme is probably how we, as city commissioners, have to be creative problem solvers, work together with lots of different leaders of the community to come up with solutions. I was actually shocked to learn some of the things about the fire department. I know Andrea has the task of going through what she's been handed and looking through just what's available with the budget as it is, and we can only do so much. But I would love to see us do a multi-tiered solution where we could do something immediately-ish to help get some of the fire station back staffed up at least to that maybe 3 personnel addition while we look for those grants as well, and look to possibly extend the city limits, possibly partner with our other fire departments or options that we have outside of city limits, and especially as we look to grow into the North Rock Creek area. So there will be a multi-tiered creative problem solving conversation involving a lot of people. I appreciate all the firemen and fire chief being here tonight and explaining to us in better detail what's going on. We do want to find a solution for you guys, and we appreciate what you do very much. I appreciate the update on the rescue mission. I know a few volunteers are still here. I personally, as a business owner on Main Street, I truly do appreciate the efforts to move the day to get the homeless off of Main Street for feedings and those sorts of things. It sounds heartless, and it's really hard to say things like that, but it does actually contribute to the misconceptions that we face having businesses downtown sometimes. And it will help our businesses to get the homeless people taken care of off of Main Street into that day shelter. And the coordinated efforts as well are just really appreciated, because I know right now we probably have, I see maybe more of this than most people up here because I'm working down there every day, but we have so many well-meaning people working to assist the homeless, but they're not coordinated. They haven't been coordinated until now. So sometimes additional problems come along with that, and we see it in our parks where there might be trash left over from a feeding. Well, the church comes in and they do something wonderful, and then it results in a trash issue for the business owners the next day, and no one's trying to create more problems. But with this coordinated effort, I have a lot of hope that you guys will be helping us with some of those issues downtown. Let's see here. Oh, I appreciate being included in those conversations with the Santa Fe Depot. The restoration of the historic buildings, especially the depot, is really near and dear to my heart. Ken and I have had so many animated conversations, and I appreciate everyone from the board meeting with me in a respectful manner to try to get some resolution so that we can keep the Historical Society going. And I actually think there are some ideas to keep them going in a better way in partnership. And I look forward to all the cool things we can bring to the depot area in the coming year, hopefully, getting those things started as quickly as possible. And thank you for all of the people that participated in the budget discussion today. If you still have questions, concerns, you want to ask a commissioner a question or staff, the budget proposal is on the city website. So you still have time. We didn't vote on anything tonight. You still have time to go look at that and then get your questions in before we would make a decision. And we can get back to you.
First off, I want to say it'd be remiss if we didn't mention that today is D-Day and honor so many that have given so much for our country. And perhaps in this week, as we remember them and are thankful for them, we can all find a veteran that we know or that we know could use a hand and do something nice or offer some assistance or just give our thanks. So from myself and my family to those of you that have served, thank you so much. And to those that gave so much on that day, we appreciate it. I was reminded this week of a quote from one of my favorite guys, Ronald Reagan, who said, "I've always believed that a lot of trouble in the world would disappear if we were talking to each other instead of about each other." And I think that's a very valid thing, and I think we've I got the privilege, along with Commissioner Ingalls, we got in a room with our friends from the Historical Society, and I think we found a framework that will really work for both parties to not just coexist but be partners. And I think that's important. And if you're interested in the framework, and I would encourage my other commissioners, because they haven't seen or heard anything, there's a sketch of what Commissioner Ingalls and I are willing to advocate for and what Director Landry endorsed on the back table. We brought copies tonight and would welcome you to get those, because a vibrant, healthy community requires difficult conversations. Many of the topics we discussed tonight are very difficult, but it works better when we all get in the room together and say, yeah, it's tough, and we may not even agree on everything, but we're going to find a solution that works for the best interest of those that we serve. So appreciate our friends from the Historical Society, and it was a good time, and I think we have a plan, and I think a plan is important. And the and I appreciate Andrea. One of the big steps in that was city rescinding their lease termination and building trust and faith with our friends. And so to have that happen, I think we're all headed toward a solution that will be great for the community. So I wanted to mention too, it's been talked about, and thankful to the police department. Increased patrols at the lake are a great deal, and we're seeing that come to fruition, and they're doing a great job out there. And our friends at the fire department, we hear you, and we want to find solutions too. And I think we're looking at a short-term fix and a long-term fix, and we're committed to getting there. It's kind of one of those things, like we talk about, tough conversations. But if we get in the room, I think we all want what's best for our community, and we can get there. And I'm fortunate that my family's had limited interactions where we've had to make calls, but every time we have, you guys show up, and we've called. I've called on several deals, and in fact, at my job, we called on a house across the street, and watch you guys run in, no questions asked. And so we appreciate all that you do, and we are committed to working together again to find solutions. And so thank you, stay safe, and we appreciate you again, and our team that's working on the budget. Thanks for getting out there. Jacob, you did a great job on the presentation. We have a few more, a couple of weeks here to mull over, ask questions, find solutions, and I'm sure we'll have several more as we go. So I encourage everybody to attend tomorrow night, 5:30 in here for the listening session. If you have input you'd like to give on the restoration of the depot and how we do it, make sure that you show up, and staff and I'll be here. I'm sure other people will be here as well, just to listen. And again, we'll get in the room and talk to each other. So appreciate everyone.
All right, you guys didn't leave me very much. We talked about a lot tonight. Definitely, we need a short-term and a long-term plan on the fire issue. There's all kinds of things that we need to look at, and we've talked about that quite a bit. But firemen, we definitely appreciate all you do for the community, and wouldn't want to be here without you guys. That's for sure. So we will work on this, and I'm sure we will get it resolved. As everybody has said, we appreciate getting the budget early. That's a big help to us. By the time we vote on it next meeting, that'll be the third time we've seen it, and that's very helpful. Also want to thank all the folks that came out tonight to hear about the budget and to talk about the budget. When we had budget hearing last year, I think we had 3 people show up, and I really hate to see that, because that is such an important thing to talk about, and nobody shows up to do it, and then we live with that budget for a year. So it'd be best to come and talk about it when it's time to do it, and I appreciate you guys coming to do that tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the resource center that we have the agreement to open. I think that's going to be a really good step for not just the downtown area, but it'll definitely be for the downtown area, but I think it'll be good for the city as a whole. I appreciate all the efforts that have gone into getting that to be a reality. I think it's going to make a big difference, and I know Erica is gone, or at least I think I saw her walk out, but I'm glad to see in her updates that we're doing our coordination meetings. I think that'll be a big help, get everybody working together, and I was really excited to see that we're going to be doing the by name meetings soon. And those of you that haven't been real involved in that, that's where, behind closed doors, our coordinator will get with the service providers in town that touch the homeless population and talk about these folks by name and try to find creative solutions to get them off the street. I mean, the ultimate goal is to get them housed and to bring our homeless number down. That's all we're working towards. So I was really glad to see that we're going to be doing our by name meetings here pretty quick, and that's something that'll be an ongoing process. In fact, those probably should never end. So it's good to see that we're making progress. I think given a little time, you guys are going to see an impact. I think you'll see our homeless numbers go down, which will be good for everybody, but it's going to take a little time. It took us 100 years to get where we're at, and it's going to take us a little bit of time to dig out of this hole some. The depot progress has been really good to hear. I'm glad the 2 of you got to meet with the Historical Society folks, and sound like there was some real good progress there, and I'm anxious to read about that. I know Kenny talked about it some, and I know he had a big smile on his face, so I'll take that as things are positive and moving forward. And I was also glad to hear Ryan say it more than once. I mean, there is no question that building is going to be fixed. There is absolutely no question that is going to happen. there's other questions that we're working through, and, you know, as evidenced by what's happened in the last week or so, we're making progress on that, and those conversations will continue. But, you know, anyone that says, oh, we're not going to fix the building, I mean, that's just not true. It's going to happen. That is all I have. And so we will adjourn, and we will move to the Airport Authority. It looks like we have next. And item 1 is the consider approval of consent agenda. Not much on there. Anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve,
I'll second.
alrighty. And second by Travis. So we have a motion and a second to approve item 1. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Item 2, consideration of an assumption and assignment of lease agreement with Kelly Millette, doing business as Janie's Snowball. And Bonnie is up. I had to wake her up, I think.
Just thank you for getting me out of the air conditioning, Josh, is the best part of it. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. This is a fairly straightforward action item. It's in 2 parts. One, Miss Kelly Millette is the daughter of Miss Janie Howe. Miss Janie Howe and her husband have been operating Janie's Snowballs successfully for quite some time on Saratoga. And it is a family decision to move the business into their daughter's name. In order to do this correctly and to ensure that the lease agreements between the Howe family, in this case the Millette family, and the Shawnee Airport Authority are properly assigned to the people who are active participants in the business, we're asking for the authority to approve a transfer and assumption to Ms. Millette. And then if that is approved, then the second item would then be the amendment to the lease to reflect that change.
Alrighty. I know I've seen them out there working on that quite a bit. Anyone got any questions? Sound pretty straightforward. How
I'll
about
make a motion to approve.
Thank you, ma'am. Alrighty. We have a motion and a second to approve item 2, so we'll call the question. And that passes 7-0. Item 3, it's like a related item there, consideration of a lease agreement with Kelly Millette, doing business as Janie's Snowball. Pretty straightforward, isn't
Fairly
it?
straightforward, just asking authorization for the city manager to execute that lease amendment.
There we go.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Thank you very much.
sir.
I'll second.
And Mark. All right, we have motion and a second to approve item 3. We'll call the question. Motion passes 7-0. Let's see, item 4, public hearing for Shawnee Airport Authority, proposed budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Jacob is up again. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. Mayor, Commissioners, we have Bonnie here to highlight some key things about the Airport Authority that weren't included necessarily in my presentation.
All righty.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just a few points to add some interest to the budget program. The budgeted revenue figure of $957,000 is purposely conservative, and the reason behind that is because most of our revenues come from fuel sales. And with the skyrocketing prices of fuel of all flavors, no matter who's buying it for what reason, we very intentionally decided that we did not want to overestimate our potential revenues because we have no particularly good way of determining whether or not some of our customers may decide that they're just going to take a break for a little while and choose alternatives to flying. So that's flat for that particular reason. Our records indicate that the 100 low lead avgas, which is used by the smaller piston type aircraft, has risen $2 per gallon since June of 2021. The Jet A has risen from $2.50 a gallon to $5 per gallon across the same time period. And to clarify, that's not the retail price, gentlemen, ladies, that's the wholesale price. So you're seeing a fairly significant increase in the Airport Authority's revenue along that same line, just to say we have to reflect the fact that we have to buy it so that we can turn around and sell it. So that's fairly high. There's also an increase in the federal grant revenue line item. The airport is entitled to $309,000 annually for capital improvements through the Airport Improvement Program. What we don't spend this year, we do have the opportunity to roll over for several years into the future. The funds will go to address 90% of the eligible costs of any one particular project. We're not expecting to use that full amount this year, but last year we didn't have capital work in our budget, so then you'll see that line item increase in our grant monies as a result of that. At our next meeting here, the staff will be presenting a request to consider an engineering agreement and a grant application to take this year's money to begin working on the stormwater that's at the airport proper. The transfer from the general fund has increased to reflect a new lease that I'm very pleased to say we're moving forward with, which is the relocation of the Army Guard facility here in Shawnee to the west side of the airport. So yay, we got that approval from the FAA, and we're moving forward with that. On the expense side, there are some increases in expense this year. As mentioned, the wholesale fuel prices having gone up over 50%. We're showing that in our budget as a reality. The actual expenses for the 2020 fiscal year for fuel that we purchased to resale was $247,500. The budgeted amount for fiscal year 23 is $345,000. Another 50% line item increase comes from the purchase of fuel and oil to operate our own equipment, much like we saw in the city's general fund budget. Increases in materials and supplies, equipment maintenance contracts reflect the same sort of thing. We do have a fairly significant one-time charge, which is to upgrade our fire monitoring and suppression capacity at the terminal building in and around the fuel farm. Capital outlays for the year are focused on repair and maintenance of our existing buildings and equipment to sustain their life. And as you mentioned, we are not deferring maintenance, Commissioner Matthews. And that would be electrical upgrades to our sewer lift station that is right there at the building, some roof repairs on various buildings, one that would actually fix a leak that leaks into my office. So I would like to have that one addressed if possible. Construction of a tractor shed for some of our outdoor equipment. Thank you very much, Commissioners, for helping us to purchase that new tractor. It does not have a home, and again, to sustain its life, we'd like to be able to build that. Replacing an old water heater with some of the smaller on-demands, reducing our power draws, reducing costs. Repairs to our T hangars that we rent to aircraft owners. Again, another source of our revenue. They need to be able to get in and operate them so we can continue to ask them to participate in the rent. And some replacements also of some of our older lighting systems on the airfield with some of the newer LED type technology to reduce costs of power and also supply equipment. Some of our pole lighting on our ramp costs us $250 a bulb. And in a good windstorm, we lose about half of them. So we're thinking LED is a better option for that. The positive news is revenues generated this year will be sufficient to meet the estimated expenses planned for fiscal 23, with a goal of establishing an operating revenue reserve of 22.94%. We are rolling money over from this year to the tune of about $300,000, and we'll be taking some of that drawdown to help address the operating costs next year, still leaving us with a fairly significant reserve.
Very good.
Thanks, Dan.
Anything for Bonnie?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we will do then is we're going to open public hearing, see if there's anyone here that would like to speak in favor of the budget. Yes, come on up, Harnick. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Mayor Bolt and Commissioners, thank you for the time. My name is Harnick. I'm part of the Airport Advisory Board. I'm also the chair of the Airport Advisory Budget Committee. And I just want to address a few points here in regards to the airport. The committee was created in January of 2021. As you know, the board is comprised of people who are truly interested in aviation and growing the airport for the city of Shawnee. So part of that was to create a budget committee to address all the concerns of the airport. And the committee reviews and considers funding for the airport to create revenues, use federal grants and fund provided by the city to supplement our revenues. You know, during the past history, and I'm not going to go too far back, but airport was not being properly maintained due to whatever consideration there was. And part of our charter is to make sure that the airport is operating at the capacity it's supposed to. And safety is one of the most important things to us. So the subcommittee decided to create 4 categories for our budget. Number 1 category is safety. So whatever that has to do with safety of operations, that goes first. The second category is operational necessity. Stuff that are not safety but are important for the operation. I just want to mention that each year over 3,000 aircrafts transit through Shawnee Airport. Okay, and the economic impact to the community is about $11.8 million worth of business coming through. So that takes a second priority. We have to make sure that we are in an operating condition to take care of those flights. Revenue generation and cost reduction is the third leg of that budget, which we look at how do we increase our revenue from the flights that come through, and how do we decrease the cost. And Bonnie touched base on some of the stuff we're talking about, such as changing to LED lights, maybe looking at more efficient heating and cooling at the building at the airport, various things that we're looking at. And of course, the fourth one is customer service. We want to make sure that the folks who are transiting through the airspace want to land at Shawnee because they had a good experience in the past. And we're beginning to see that. We're beginning to see that with the repeat jet customers, and we're beginning to see that with the military. That they're beginning to use Shawnee a lot more, which is great because that's a huge amount of fuel that we get to sell. Our budget is a rolling budget. So it's a 5-year plan, and the committee meets every so often and reevaluates the budget. So what we put on the budget is real issues. These are not wannabes, and we would like to. These have to do with the operation safety, like I mentioned before. So these are serious. We take it extremely seriously, and we rack and stack. And depending on what's happening, we constantly change those within the budget. Not going outside the budget, but changing the priorities. The proposed budget under consideration tonight includes the key projects that the committee and the advisory board identified and recommended for the fiscal year 2023. Revenues generated in the fiscal 2022 and those budgeted for fiscal 2023 are sufficient to address the costs of this project. So kind of it's revenue neutral, pretty much. I'm an aviator. I have a couple of thousand hours. I'm also an aerospace engineer. So aerospace flying is part of my DNA. And we look at numbers, we look at budgets, and those are the tangible stuff that you guys can see and you can look at. But there's another intangible element to the airport, and that's how it inspires the next generation to go forward. Our airport, believe it or not, is an incredible tool for the youngsters to find out what's available to them, whether it's in the aviation maintenance field or as an aviators and pilots to go forward. And it's a gateway for them to have an option to go forward in their life. So don't discount it. Airport brings a lot more to the table than just dollars and budgets. So please keep that in mind, that intangible part of it, that you cannot put a price on it. There's an old saying in the aviation world that a mile of road won't get you far, but a mile of runway will get you anywhere you want to go. And that's the gateway for these kids. Let them go where they can go with it. With that, I would like to extend my appreciation for the commission for being so forward-leaning towards the airport and what we are trying to accomplish and being patient with us. My thanks to the city manager and her office and the Shawnee Airport Authority for being good partners for us. The airport has a second life, and we're going forward with it, and we're hoping that we will make this a jewel of crown of all the airports in the neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Seeing none, then we'll see if, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? All righty. We will close the public hearing then. Jim, any discussion up here? Sounds like things are going well at the airport. It's good to hear. All righty, not hearing anybody be real talkative, probably because it's after 9 o'clock. We will move on. Item 5, new business.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
All righty, thank you, ma'am. We are adjourned, and we will move on to the municipal authority.
Mr. Mayor, I hate
Yes.
to do this, but if we don't take a 2-minute break,
No, let's do
the
it.
chief is gonna have
Let's
to
do
arrest
it.
me for going in the bushes.
Then let's do it. That's right. That's an easy thing to do. Authority. Item 1, consider approval of consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
That was slow.
See if anyone wanted to pull anything.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve item 1. We'll call the question. Well, nope, we're not blinking yet. Now we're blinking. There you go. And motion passes 7-0. Item 2, public hearing for the Shawnee Municipal Authority proposed budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Says Jacob, but I bet it's Brad.
No slide. So I will try to be as thorough as possible. Now, as Mr. Bussell mentioned earlier, 55% of the revenue for the SMA fund is a one-time revenue, and that's specifically funding for water and wastewater plant upgrades. Our water plant projects began construction this past August and is expected to be complete late spring of next year of 2023. That project will increase our capacity from 7.6 million gallons a day to 10 million gallons a day, address some taste and odor issues, and strain on our distribution system from our current backwash procedures. We're anticipating bidding the wastewater project in first part of August, with completion sometime in the fourth quarter of 25. And it's a three-pronged project that includes 9 miles of 24-inch force main, HDPE thick plastic pipe that will transport from south side location to the north side location for treatment, converting our extremely antiquated treatment plant at our south side location into a large lift station to pump that through the pipe to the north side, which will be a new plant, new process. We will move from activated sludge to a SBR, batch reactor. That will also, with the new process, that allows us a 20-year growth capacity with even more option or ability to add on as you go on, as we grow over the years. A couple other items on the list are the Twin Lakes Dam repair is just that. We're repairing the dam. Deferred maintenance has resulted in the rip basically sliding down the face of the dam and exposing it to erosion issues. City Works is another one that continues to move forward. We're still anticipating a third quarter rollout for this first quarter of the next year, fiscal year. Annual lagoon and digester cleaning, that's routine maintenance items to ensure proper plant operation and compliance with DEQ. USIC is just to increase efficiency of our operations and other than that, there's really no out of ordinary expenses through the rest of the budget. And that is, I believe, all I have.
Okay.
Unless Mr. Commissioner Rutherford has any questions.
City View still on track? City View?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes.
So do you know about when?
First part of this fall.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Looking forward to that.
September,
Okay.
most likely.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will open public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the budget? All right, seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Nope. All righty, we will move on and close the public hearing. Any other discussion up here? All righty. We'll move on. Item 3, new business.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. It's time to go home. Let's adjourn.
Meeting on